This episode was recorded January 19th, 2025. Welcome to muckrAIkers, where we dig through the latest happenings around so-called AI. In each episode, we highlight recent events, contextualize the most important ones, and try to separate muck from meaning. I'm your host, Jacob Hames, and joining me is my co-host, Igor Kravchuk.
Thanks, Jacob. This week is a special episode, but before we get into that, here's some highlights from the holiday season. As our first entry, the wonderful world of timing-based information leaks has arrived in the world of LLMs, with shared cache vulnerabilities leading to information about OpenAI's architectures being leaked.
We also got Francois Chollet, who is someone we've actually talked about in pretty high esteem on this show in the past, has started a new lab with the focus of AGI, which, I guess that was surprising to me, at least.
Next up, the White House decided that not only can Americans not have TikTok, the rest of the world cannot have GPUs in the same amount anymore, except if you're one of the top 8 countries. And notably, Switzerland, Singapore, and Israel are not tier 1 countries.
Yes, and then a very, well-cited, well-known lawyer who, I don't know their name, but I guess if you're in that space, you would, has dropped Meta as a client specifically for the case where Meta is accused of using libgen and other, copyrighted material to train their models. He cited specifically the fact that, Zuckerberg has gone red-pilled, essentially, and started saying neo-Nazi, toxic masculinity stuff. So, I guess maybe there are some consequences for that, but for the fact that, I guess Meta's just not doing anything against hate speech anymore, but we'll see. And the last update that we wanted to talk about was that METR has released some new evals on AI's capacity to do research and development on AI. And we actually have our first guest on muckrAIkers here, who was a big part of that process, Chris Canal.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, so Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What are you doing now?
Okay, I guess a short background on me. I was working as an electrician, and I noticed how many things are repetitive. And I was 17 at the time, and I was thinking these things must be automated. Like, I've seen robots on TV. Why aren't they doing these things?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of started my journey into automation and engineering. I continued as an electrical engineer. When I worked at iRobot, though, I realized I was awful at that. I almost burned down the building in one case, a new prototype of a Roomba. And this is kind of my personality. I think a lot of startup people are like this, but have more arrogance, more, think they're right, everyone's wrong. And I made a heat sink out of steel because I was in a rush in this prototype. You're supposed to run them in a fireproof room, and the room was taken. So I just ran it in a conference room, and it just lit on fire, and they almost burned down that room. It was really awful. And they didn't ask me to come back for work. I was at an internship, but I had written some software while I was there, and the head of software asked me to work there as a software engineer, where I couldn't light anything on fire.
You can't burn anything down with the software, probably. At least.
Yeah, and I realized I really enjoyed software, and I was really good at that, so I just transitioned. I think the next kind of important thing in my career is I had started a company that was automating some real estate stuff for realtors in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And during that, I read Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence, and I decided I need to work on machine learning. This is in 2015. I was like, transition everything, drop everything. Machine learning is the thing. And so I worked with a research lab at Northeastern for a bit, and then I transitioned to being a data scientist for a contracted out to IBM, and a couple other jobs before then.
So you're this is if I'm remembering correctly, that was 2014
That's
that
correct. Yeah.
this comes out. So you've read it like pretty soon after it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
you're like,
remember
okay,
I heard about it on a Sam Harris podcast, and he mentioned the book, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I read Superintelligence cover to cover like 3 times over the
huh,
next year. Um, yeah, probably took it way too seriously in retrospect. Um, but yeah, that kind of that was really the activation energy to switch all my focus. It's funny what's relevant. Can you guys hear any background noise from me?
a little bit, yes.
Yeah, there's a child with a like toy that's very loud. um, let's see. What exactly was I saying?
But actually, there was one question I had there. So for me at least, like I also didn't start in machine learning. I'm curious for you at this point, you've already had a decent amount of experience. How easy was it for you to get into the research? You're because it sounded almost like it was seamless, at
Oh
least
yeah,
in the
yeah.
amount that you said. Like, was it just like a no problem got in, or was it difficult to establish yourself?
No, it was fairly easy. I think the thing about I was in college at the time, so I worked
Hmm.
with one of my professors, and then I worked
Hmm.
in the Smile Lab a little bit, just like a couple different labs that are in Boston, and those they really need people who are good at software. So if you're just
Hmm.
like your basic object-oriented programming, like they have skills to make organized software, uh, you're kind of like this really valuable resource for people who are really good at math and write spaghetti code in Jupyter notebooks.
Right.
So they have like 100 different untitled Jupyter notebooks, and they're like, we need to make a paper that has organized stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'll organize all your code. Um,
Gotcha.
it's funny because
Okay.
like that's weirdly like what I'm doing now again with this company, but for research orgs like METR, and a couple others. So
So
uh,
yeah, zoom forward a bit, and
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
any other developments that were like particularly important, but then to where you are
yeah.
now.
I guess I would say I was like a decent developer, and then I worked for Amazon for 4 years as a
Hmm.
machine learning engineer. And while I was there, I designed and implemented a couple like worldwide systems
Hmm.
that are like human in the loop machine learning type systems. Got a couple patents on those systems. I don't like patents, by the way, but uh, they wanted to patent some of the work. So
Well,
that kind of
yeah,
shows like that it was important enough, I guess, and useful enough.
yeah.
Um, and that was pretty hugely influential. Um, yeah, I think it's the first time there's a couple projects where it's like once I launched the project caused like hundreds of people to be fired internally at Amazon. And that kind of influenced my models about how AI is going to impact white collar labor
Hmm.
in the coming years. And I think that's still something that I worry about a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We'll get into that more because that's an area of particular interest for me. Um,
yeah. So I guess I left Amazon. I'm trying to think. I guess that was like a year and a half ago almost, and I wanted to work on a couple different projects in AI safety. I've been doing AI safety type projects since like 2018. Um, this is also relevant. I think after I read Nick Bostrom's book, I hypothesized that there would be a Manhattan project style thing for AI,
hmm.
and I was like, I want to make my career about being on that project. I just want to
Hmm.
be a person who helps out. And I got introduced to Less Strong in 2017, and I met people there who were more concerned about AI, and that made me realize that just a Manhattan project where you're just gunning for AGI as quickly as possible may be quite a bit more difficult than I initially thought. And yeah, so that it's funny the post about that you mentioned before this call, the post about an AGI Manhattan project, I guess was kind of a long time coming. I just like didn't write down those thoughts. Um, Now there's a different part of myself that thinks the project is kind of silly and doomed to fail, and there's another part that's still like hopeful and hopes that something like this could be the solution to the dangers around some, super intelligence.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
And so then, how does that manifest in like what you're currently doing? Because you said you've
yeah,
changed some of that, but like not all of it. So how are you working towards sort of this goal of your not witnessing or seeing come to fruition the downsides of AI
yeah.
creation?
Well, I feel like since I've been reading a lot of Less Wrong posts, something I care a lot about is uncertainty and
Hmm.
managing my natural arrogance appropriately. And I think I've realized what I think is like the crux of will AI be really dangerous or not has to do with, can it improve itself? Can it do AI research? Can it model the code around it and its own weights accurately enough to improve itself where it maintains similar goals or not, I guess. So like this sort of like AI R&D research seems like the kind of crux of my beliefs about the progress of AI. Um, and so I want to eliminate that uncertainty.
Hmm.
That's like the current thing. Um, I think other efforts that my company focuses on right now is we are working with a couple clients to make an alignment solution that's a very small scale alignment solution. So like limited scope problems.
So what
Um,
is that? I guess two quick things. First is what's your
yeah.
company? Because I don't think you've
Yeah.
said that yet.
Yeah. I started this company called EquiStamp with a friend, Daniel O'Connell. We were working on a website called AIsafety.info together.
Hmm.
Um, and he's an amazing developer, like an actual 100x developer or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just love working with this guy, and so I was like, hey, we should do something together. He's a Welsh man who lives in Poland, and yeah, we decided that we thought evals were the most poorly done thing in the space, and
Hmm. And when was
that
this?
this was this is I get this is 2023
Okay.
October,
Yeah.
October
So pretty
2023.
recent.
Yeah, pretty recent. Yeah, we were kind of annoyed with evals, and we thought that there's a lot of uncertainty about how dangerous AI actually is. We
Hmm.
are afraid that it's more dangerous than most people think.
Hmm.
And so we, like like good software developers, we approach the problem at a very meta level, where it's like, how can we give people the tools to make better evals? Um, and that's still ongoing. I think what's the thing that kind of changed along the way, the big pivot, is that most people that used our tools just wanted us to build evaluations for them or build the infrastructure for them to run evals or collect data. A lot of companies have huge privacy concerns, and so rather than use our tool, they're like, we already have something that we'd like you to just build on or modify or make as good as your thing. So the company EquiStamp is now more of a evaluation consulting company.
Hmm.
We have like 12 people that are mostly full time, and then an additional like 25 part time people that help with baselining, meaning like humans that take the same tests we're giving the AI and provide a reference point to see how strong those AIs are compared to humans. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah,
And
we
is
mostly
this
bill
like
hourly.
so this is expert baselining then
Yes. Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
okay.
It's like these aren't Turkers. These are people. Some of them, like work at Google and currently
Hmm.
and are on Gemini team.
Good old
Things
gig
they're
economy. They got to make that cheddar
yeah,
somehow.
yeah. So they're expensive.
Yes.
These are not cheap people. There's some baseliners that are more affordable, especially if depending on the country they live in. Um, but my company, we pay everyone, including myself. Everyone makes the exact same salary.
Hmm.
Um, so it's been harder to get those top tier people because I have to find people who care about AI safety, care about making evals better, and will work for below their San Francisco market rate. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is a struggle for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to give you an idea, it's like $50. We pay out $50 USD for like infrastructure building and bugs, and tech support for other companies. And then we pay out $100 an hour currently for baseliners.
Are you recruiting?
Yep. Yes. I think,
Okay, so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's at least one reason then for everyone that's listening. You're thinking, why is this guy come onto this podcast? Uh, it's because, well, I don't know why, but one of the reasons could
I
have
came on for
been,
fun, but
well,
yeah,
yes, okay,
the
one of the reasons could have been also that you should check out applying to EquiStamp because maybe they'll hire you.
yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows?
You can go to equistamp.com, join the Discord. If you just message me, say what skills you have. The main things we're looking for are people who know about crypto, cybercrime, machine learning is huge, and general
So
software
true.
devs. I I've recently gotten a influx of requests for front end too, so
Hmm.
that was like the most recent thing I've been asking. I think yesterday I've been asking a bunch of people like, who knows front end? Like I suddenly have a ton of front end stuff, but yeah, lots of different things. Uh, we we will employ anyone in a non-US embargoed country. So not Iran, not Russia, not North Korea, not Somalia, not Venezuela.
Uh,
But sorry for that.
as the naive European, like, are your baseliners contractors, or do you also provide like health insurance benefits? Because that's a thing in the US, right?
Yes, yes. So uh, all the baseliners are contractors right now, every
Okay.
single one.
Hmm.
Um, there's another thing where it's like if my company was more successful and richer, I would love to give everyone benefits. I mean, it'd be
Right.
incredible. Weirdly, talking to people though, because I've offered some benefits, been like, hey, we can start doing this. The benefits cost this much. I can give that to you, or I can just give you more money. We pay out a lot of bonuses, so people end up making
Mm-hmm.
effectively way more money per hour based on how quickly they do the work, and
Hmm.
there's
Okay.
there's a big bonus program. So people most of the time would rather have the cash
Yeah.
and have the freedom to just pay for their own benefits.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
mean,
don't know if
yeah,
that's
for
yeah.
me at least, like I'm doing effectively contracting uh right now for my employment, and I get my insurance through my significant other. So like
Nice. Yeah.
I don't it's not yeah, it's worth more to me than if I could get that, I would prefer to just have the money because I already get it through my yeah. So but I feel like a lot of people who can do this sort of contract work like have some reason that they can like they can get insurance through like through another or like a family member
Yeah.
and so then uh I guess maybe if there was a different demographic that like uh contractors who didn't already have this situation figured out, then maybe that would be helpful, but I don't know.
Yeah. So this is like also a thing. I think we have like a very biased subset of people.
Hmm.
It's mostly men. It's mostly young men, and they just don't care about benefits. They're never sick. They don't have families,
Yep.
so they're just like, give me more money.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. I mean,
No,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm like,
makes sense.
I, I, I think this is like one of those things. As an employer, you're never sure if like your recruiting methods are unbiased enough. That's probably not that interesting though. Let's get into something else.
Okay.
I think it is interesting, but I think it's maybe like a separate episode. I think
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Jacob has a second podcast like into AI safety, and maybe you can really go deep on like the company and the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing around that.
That's true.
But here I had earlier some a thing which like part of the idea that I had on this podcast was like talking about like world models and risk
yes,
models and
yeah,
like how, because like you seem like a sane guy for now, and like I think you have like the same impression of me
yeah,
for now.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, also Jacob, I assume. But like for world models, there's a question of like how do we like rationalize
yeah.
what there is? And you use the word AI a bunch, and you mentioned you have originally like more like self-taught software engineer more than anything.
Hmm.
Uh, and I have like an observation that I make that there's a certain like threshold of people who like break down the system into its components and actually like understand the whole thing, and that have a bit this like software engineer. It's abstract away. It's an AI and it's basically like an API, and like it's a you press a button, smart comes out, kind of. So like if it, like if we break down like AI systems into like
Yeah.
software component, I know you can do. Then there's like the optimization procedure. There's actually like how
Yeah.
do we adjust the parameters? How do we get stuff to converge?
Yeah.
And there's kind of like the learning theory, the statistical elements. Depends how you want to call it, but kind of like this reasoning about how you have like random variables and data and how you get like bits from information theoretic properties. And if you had to kind of like break down your mental model of AI
Yeah.
into these components, like
Okay.
where like how does it work, how do you break it down, and
Ah.
like where do you feel like, okay, here I know my shit because I've done it a lot, and here's
Mm.
like I leave it to people who you think know better.
Oh wow. Okay. That's a big question. I think this could be like a seminar, but I'll say that I guess I would start by saying I believe in scaling laws. So my experience with neural nets in general is that if you have either a small enough set of data and or enough weights, you can always completely overfit to the data.
Hmm.
That seems true. Um, and so there is some like middle ground between not having enough and having too many, where you actually get a little bit of generalization. It seems like the amount of generalization doesn't matter as much when it comes to architecture. Um, yeah, I mean this is just scaling along, right? It's like more data, more weights, we get more generalization. I think I disagree since you mentioned Francois Chollet. I guess that you know his models well enough, and maybe Jan LeCun's models. These people who are more anti-safety, anti-LLM-ish type people.
Hmm.
Um, I think I disagree with their idea that you can't get full AGI or and beyond with language models. I kind of like the Ilya Sutskever um, thinking about it, where it's like it took our entire world and our history to make each next token. Um, and so if you're able to really accurately predict the next text token, uh, the simplest model probably has a really good world model of how things work. And I also disagree with some things that I've heard. I think from Francois Chollet about there not being enough information about like physics or other physical real world things. Like I think you can kind of infer what's going on with just descriptions of stories. Like there are enough descriptions about things falling on the ground and uh, equations that govern those interactions, like friction and things like this. And I also doubt that those things are important to having a super high level of intelligence. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
like these are your beliefs, and like
yeah.
what I was thinking about is kind of like how do you arrive there? Because like
Mm,
here you just like cite a bunch of names and you have like the high level things, but like
sure.
if you break down just the LLM and the next token prediction,
Hmm.
there's like depth there. Like actually understanding the components
Sure.
is something that like takes a while. And
Yes.
like, could you explain in detail and like kind of like defend why you believe a thing about the next token prediction, like in some way that is like not appealing to authority and appealing to vice, but like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you derive it,
Sure. I
and you know,
yeah, I will try to avoid such logical fallacies. Yeah, I'm trying to summarize this. First, I guess I could speak out loud. Maybe that'll be more interesting. So I like LeCun's model of how to build AGI, which has kind of these separate parts. There's a graphic in a paper he wrote about this like a couple years ago, but like one of those most important parts is a world model. So the thing about that world model is if it's accurate enough, you can propagate out more tokens, and those tokens maybe they represent an image, maybe a space, or maybe some audio or whatever. But essentially, if you can predict far out enough and you have enough compute to explore a tree of possible predictions, if you perturbate those output tokens, those output vectors, I think you like this is simple enough to get AGI. The reason that I think that, without appealing to any sort of logical fallacy, I think has mostly to do with what I believe about evolution. So I think brains in general are predicting the next thing that's going to happen in the world model to get more food and ultimately propagate genes. So, like a lot of the simplest loops that you see in things like bacteria are things like they're like PID loops, right? They're like it detects a certain amount of food or a certain amount of light and moves this thing to go towards the food thing. And if you look at older species, you see like things develop around a digestive tract where it's like eventually there's a hole that passes food through and extracts nutrients, and that self-replicates. Um, and then everything, all the sort of like more complex structures, like neurons and things, kind of come about to make the time steps of not just detecting, oh, there is likely more food here, go that way, but like when I go that way, like there's maybe the further out steps matter more and more. And
Right.
this
Like
seems like
the
something,
explaining, or not explaining, but like exploring the different possibilities of, if I go there, then
yeah,
these are the things that might happen,
yeah. That
based
just
on
seems,
having more inputs, and like being able to use those to your advantage.
yeah. So I guess this sort of belief that this sort of like our intelligence can arise from something so simple as like trying to predict how to get more food in the hole, um, makes me think that something like trying to predict next token seems sufficient enough if you have enough compute and time and data to get something similar to us or superior.
So I can give you my answer to my question, but I also just in hooking into this, I want to ask you something which is, can you see how that to me is a bit like the South Park underpants gnome thing, where you're basically saying like very simple thing, question mark, question mark, question mark, human society, and like you kind of skipping about all of the parts that needed to come together to drive like humans in particular or like
Mm.
social animals in particular to intelligence, because like
Okay.
not every not every amoeba has human intelligence, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of other stuff that and what you're describing is like something I see quite often. Like people have like these like nice stories that are like like cool as an interested intellectual smart guy.
Uh,
We latch onto them, but then there's no actual connection between any of the ideas. Like you
Fair.
jump from transformers to evolution to simple to big things, but like there's
Ah,
no
okay. Yeah. I
rationalization
think I
of
see
the
what's going on
system
here.
that actually goes there that
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking for, and that's
Ah,
why I said like the underpants gnome. Like if you had to like try to go like step by step, like with analogy, and like we have like
yeah.
simple amoeba food, a bunch of steps until human intelligence, and you have to kind of like draw that through line for you. Like how exactly is like the
Mm,
causal pathway that enables the next token prediction? How would that look like?
mm. Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying, and I do admit there's like I always worry about like have you ever heard the term copium? Where it's yeah, where
Yeah.
it's like so I feel myself sometimes more likely to believe things that I can understand easily rather
Yeah.
than accept that there's a more complex process that I really need to spend time or that is maybe even beyond my level of intelligence to understand. So it's like I kind of hear what you're saying and I'm like, investigating this like story that I've just told isn't an oversimplification that I like because I can interpret it. Uh, I think that's certainly possible. I also when I hear you talk, I think there's a like a human bias a little bit where you might believe, oh, humans have human intelligence is very complex and has a lot of parts. There's like, maybe if you're thinking about from the frame of the brain, there's like the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex and the occipital lobe and all these different parts that have different functions. And our learning is very different. Like we have a very hormone-based, sleep-based learning system, and backprop is like feels like it's nothing like that. So yeah, I'll say that I usually dispel of these sorts of biases by using the term competence instead of intelligence. I don't actually care about intelligence. I think it's it's nice when you're with your friends and you're like, oh, we're smarter than all these other noobs or whatever, and we're in less wrong, or we read really smart things. But I think the things I'm worried about are just machines that are very competent at doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I like to mention amoebas is because it feels like a machine. And why I compared it to PID loop is because if you've ever programmed like a quadcopter or any sort of a line following robot, like these simple algorithms are very interpretable. It's a machine still. But as you give that machine more, you use a machine learning process, you give that machine an increasingly complex function with weights that can be updated. You start to not be able to conceptualize these like super crazy dimensional spaces and like what exactly is going on. And you kind of just have to use the process of like understanding the chunks and then saying like, okay, these chunks sort of fit together, and now I'm going to think of this abstraction as, now there's a transformer head and there's an embedding and there's these different parts, and it's hard to hold all in your head at once like you can a simple algorithm. But in general, I'm trying to just do the mathy thing of thinking about functions and the limit. And so there's this simple function, there's kind of a trend line of like from PID loops to humans, there's all these things. There's amount of data that it took evolution to get from amoebas to human competence. There's amount of energy, and those things are proxies. Yes, what would you?
So like, if you're gonna make that thing,
Yeah.
like, do you want to be held to the logic of that statement? Like, you think about it as a function and there's a limit.
Yeah, I'm comfortable being held to that, I guess.
Because
Yeah.
if we're talking about these types of analysis, like this is where I like, not against you, like this is kind of like against my problems with the discourse. Is like, this is where we enter kind of like the thing of technobabble, where people who aren't actually like mathematicians, who have studied calculus and like know what a limit is on like a deep level, and like what the idea behind that is, and what conditions allow you to take that limit, use this as another like image, and like what you're missing is continuity.
So,
Like if you want to just apply standard calculus, you need to have like a continuous function, you need to have a bunch
Yep.
of other things, and then you can do that.
I feel like
And
I need to interrupt and say I am not using the mathematical term of limit correctly. I should use a different word. The thing I meant is like in the ends of the function, like if I'm graphing something, like competence.
hey, you're talking in images.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
I know what you mean.
thinking of a graph, and I'm thinking like, okay, at the bottom end of the simplest organism, there's this score of competence. And when I was saying limit, I just meant like at the far end that we can't see, past humans, what is the like the intelligence highest point? And then I'm thinking about
And
like, okay, what changes over this scale with different organisms?
so like, like just for like also clarity, because like you mentioned my thing, like I don't think humans are necessarily like special. Like I think I have as like specific things that are like important abstractions to maintain, because if you ignore them, then you're just wrong. You know, kind of like leaky abstractions. So one example that I pulled up, well, it was like, is this link that I just shared in the chat. Like you mentioned, like given enough data and compute, you have like a belief that you can like learn every model and you're gonna like be able to generalize. And like this is like one example of like, given just 3 variables, if you just like get observations from them, like you cannot distinguish between the like groups of causal graphs that are in these like sections that are in the GIF here. So like your model is gonna like in 1/3 of the cases where there's 3, it's gonna just get it wrong, and basically you can't get better than this, just because of like what you can learn from data. And the only way you can actually reliably learn something is if you do experiments, if you do interventions, if you
Yep.
do that.
Yep.
And so kind of like stuff like this is what I really care about of the mathematical details, because if you ignore that, you're just wrong. It's not that it makes it simpler or more approachable. You're just not actually modeling the system correctly. But I agree with you that it's much more useful to think about like capabilities or competences than to stick to, you know, like some anthropomorphized definition of like intelligence. Like what
Yeah.
I think like humans have is basically like online learning, more or less endless capacity that doesn't forget, you know, like no catastrophic forgetting, and a few other things. And I call this kind of like the bag of tricks model of like human
Yep.
behavior. And if we have those, you have what is like equivalent to human level whatever, and there's nothing magic about them. It doesn't matter if you get via backpropagation or via memorizing things. You just need to actually like have them, and then the whole other thing goes out of the way. So I really empathize with like, and I get the idea of thinking about like machine capabilities, and like if a machine is given like decision making power, it doesn't matter how like really smart it is. Like I don't know if you were around when there was these flash crashes.
Yes.
Like the first.
Yeah. I mean, it's mentioned in Nick Bostrom's book. That was the first I heard about it.
Yeah.
Can you give a brief description of what that is, just in case maybe someone in the conversation doesn't know about it?
The first iteration of trading bots were relatively simple. It was people realizing, oh shit, I can make money by having a computer trade faster.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as it turns out, you can have like bad feedback loops. It gets a signal, it overcorrects, then it like oversteers in like the other direction. Then it gets the signal that there's an error again, and that amplifies. And this basically what happened with these flash crashes. That like trading algorithms were seeing stuff, overreacting to it. That sent a signal to other trading algorithms, and that just amplified itself into like within a few minutes, like 30% market crash or something like that. Don't know the exact number.
Oh, yeah.
And then the way to stop that in both PID systems and in both systems was just like delays and buffers and circuit breakers, like things that stop the feedback loop and let like other stuff take over until these feedback loop mechanisms have like the right operating behavior already. And the important thing, I think, the lesson is like you don't need a like powerful machine or like a smart machine or a capable machine like to be dangerous. Even if it's like a small capability, if it's like put into the wrong place, it can do a lot of harm. Like, and I think like
yes,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
So I think that's at least the biggest thing that it seems we're all very much on board with, is this idea of like intelligence sort of like is a word, and we don't, that's not what we're talking about or care about as much as like capabilities and giving giving machines, automatic systems, the capacity to make these decisions that will have meaningful consequences, and then also understanding the failure modes of those systems. Is that roughly correct?
Yeah. I think I'm looking through the frame of a lot of AI safety concepts lately. So I think about like intermediate goals and terminal goals and stuff, and having systems set up that make you money or automate things is like an intermediate goal for like each individual's terminal goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think nowadays a lot of tech bros, a lot of people like me are thinking about immortality and a lot of stuff for everyone. These sort of utopic situations on the positive side, and then on the negative side, the things we're worried about are like crazy suffering worlds or nanny states, situations where we're not flourishing or maybe even suffering, or maybe just everyone dying at once. So what was the exact question you wanted me to answer? Or I feel like I've gone off track a little bit.
we're on track. Like, if you
Contract.
just think your thoughts, I'm gonna like backtrack, but like Jacob had like I think he wanted to get out of this.
I guess I was more just identifying for myself as like a common thread between the three of us.
Oh, yeah.
That seems very strong, and then wanting to verify that I wasn't misrepresenting you guys.
Mm.
In that like the thing that seems to be most important is when decisions like yeah when important decisions are relegated to um machines with or other systems with that capability without understanding those systems fully.
I disagree slightly
Okay.
because my thing is people will never do that. It's just that other systems put in place cause their decision making to like pre-muddied. There's a very nice book about this by Didier Sonnet and Dmitry Chernov called human-made like information concealment and human-made catastrophes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the way all of this stuff usually like would work is like the flash crash thing. Some engineer told people that, hey, we should not just let these bots running without oversight. Like there's all of these failure modes that can happen. We don't know this. And someone had like dollar cents, but no, fuck it, like just give it more money. Just like we need to trade on this. Like it's hot.
Yeah. Yep.
And like,
Yes, I guess
I
my
yeah.
what I was saying I don't think is incompatible with what you just said. Decisions can be relegated to machines in that way without like it doesn't really matter how we got there. Like it
does matter though. It does matter though, because one thing is like nobody could have foreseen this, and in the other side, it's the institutional design that kept the like knowledge that was there from actually affecting the risky decision.
Yes. Did you have a question from earlier?
Yeah, so basically, my question around these, like, how do we break down these models was kind of aimed at, like, a hypothesis that I have, you know, like, and you semi-fit them. Like, I'm actually, like, very pleasantly surprised about, like, the competences thing and, like, the awareness of that, so that's cool. But, like, I hope it's not, like, you don't take it as an offense or, like, something like, I don't think you actually, like, have, like, the deep understanding of the underpinnings of like modern ML in the sense of, you know, like information theory, like that. Like if I ask you to derive the actual thing, like why does this learn in like the places where we can prove it? Like there's like proofs behind when an algorithm can learn something from a given distribution, and like why transformers are better about this stuff. You might know some of it, but it wasn't like your go-to way of describing the system to me. You went to like images and simplified things, and that to me is like this pattern of like software engineer, not necessarily like machine learning from first principles. It's like you have done machine learning systems and you can build them, but like you don't think of it in these like first principle abstractions, and then the system. You first think about it as a system, and then you go to these abstractions when you need to like reason about a particular thing. But that's kind of the vibe that I got. This for me, this is one of where a lot of the cruxes come from.
I see. Okay.
I can go on, but like first of all, would you say there's like a fair characterization of it? Because like you kind of answered the question already in a way that told me that, okay, like you don't latch onto the chance to break things down into, oh yeah, this is information theory that makes the linear regression work, and then the latent variable that comes from this can be done like this.
So
and then
I just want to before you
this.
give a chance to respond, I also want to say that like from a communications perspective, I actually like regardless of Chris's answer, I strongly sympathize with this like idea of going towards the thing that is more intuitive initially, because it's like communicating at a certain level of complexity can be really, really difficult, even just like internally. So sometimes it's a lot easier to do this more like go for the abstraction first. And I think that, you know, I never want to discourage something that's more accessible, I guess. So I just want to put that out there, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like still thinking critically about it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I want to respect Igor's assessment of me and consider it. I think Igor is a very smart person, and I trust her ability to model not only me but also ML stuff. And so, yeah, my feeling about my own knowledge of ML is like, here's something I think about a lot. Like, could I code a thing without using any libraries? And if I could, I generally say like, oh yeah, I understand it for the most part. Um, I don't know if that's like meets the same standard because like what it means a lot of the times is that I understand functionally something, but I don't necessarily understand why, or like I couldn't.
I'm looking more for the thing of like, if I ask you to explain to me, can you use a standard linear regression, like,
Okay.
OLS, to model a Laplacian, like, um, variable? Like,
A distribution.
there's like the underlying variable is not a Gaussian, it's a Laplacian. Like, what does that change? That's like the like, it's not about like, can you implement it? Is like, what do the words mean? What does a Gaussian mean? And what does it imply? What does the Laplacian mean? Like, concretely, like math is a very fancy language, and I usually try to get like simpler language.
Mhm.
But there's like intuition and also like rigorous intuitions that come from like this deep understanding. And then, um, in my experience, once people have it, if they're given the chance, it will also be like the first thing they go towards, which is why barely anybody can talk to mathematicians, because for them it's very clear what they say.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I only have one mathematician working for me right now. Um, yeah, I think if you want to know like my how well I understand linear regression, I mean we could get into that. I think you are right in the assessment that like how would I approach using a linear regression to solve an ML problem? Like I would probably do more trial and error with tests than I would just sitting down and thinking about the problem. So I'm going to do the dumb thing of like running a thing a bunch of times, adding more parameters to that linear regression till it fits, maybe overfits, just doing the regular thing of like splitting data to see if I'm overfitting, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I mean, very simple stuff. I think in terms of like modeling data to understand the distribution of that data prior to choosing an algorithm, I also take like if you could model my exact process, it would fit on a fairly small tree, decision Markov process, right? It's not going to be that complex, and I don't claim to have like a very mathematically deep understanding. I think most of my understanding comes from like abstracts of papers. So I'm not.
And
Yeah.
and just to be clear, like, I'm not trying to say, oh, you don't know the math, therefore your opinion is invalid. But it's just like there's different lenses, like a practitioner has a different lens than somebody who studies the thing. My ex-girlfriend is a doctor. She cares about healing people, so she doesn't really care that placebo doesn't exist really. She just uses the fact that it makes people feel better to help them. And like, I'm
Sure.
more like scientist type person. I want to know, does it actually help or not?
Mhm.
And then I have is like, I like I'm offended by the idea of doing something just because like it's like the sense making consensus of of humans if it's wrong, kind of in the context of a placebo. And in the context of ML, the way these different lenses of like the practitioner's lens and then like the builder lens, the hacker lens,
Mhm.
and like somebody who like has this deep understanding is, for example, how do you reason about counterfactuals? Like a system works because you build it. And if I ask you like, will this still work if these things change?
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can always tell me yes, no, or I don't know. You
Definitely
can
not.
like vibe it, but you can't like give me reasons for your
No.
answer.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, it's like even thinking in your frame, I will say, is difficult to me because like I think
Yeah.
about so the thing we just mentioned,
Yeah.
like circuit breakers and a flash crash. So
Yeah.
a story that I'm allowed to share now about Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Me and one other engineer built the photo on delivery system, and problems started happening with people, angry drivers. Maybe a dog tries to bite them or something, and so rather than sending a picture of the package, they might send a picture of their package just to like do something rude and mean to the customer. So we had to start building systems to check all those images. These systems then other systems were built on top of this. Now the image is expected in many cases. And so it becomes a thing where if the images aren't being sent or collected, like a bunch of stuff fails. And
Mhm.
around COVID, um, our algorithm, which is simple, it was like ResNet 101, fine-tuned for the particular data set.
Mhm.
It started producing some unusual data. Like basically 30% of the images were labeled as like obscene. And this was like not noticed because I hadn't built anything, any sort of circuit breaker, any sort of anomaly detection at the time, which was stupid. This is like, I think good ML people are forged in like these sorts of fires. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, basically what had happened is there's so many grocery deliveries for Amazon all over the world and so many new deliveries for things because people couldn't go to stores that the support centers ran out of like boxes and bags and they were just putting the items in like anything they could find. And so there was like really weird shaped items that the model had never seen before. They were really weird shaped containers. And this distributional shift just caused my whole system to fall apart. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't working. And so there was kind of an emergency data collection and retraining that happened over a few days. And this is sort of like the equivalent of the flash crash type thing, where it's like you have kind of a remedial understanding of the algorithms, and you're like, oh well, this algorithm seemed to work in a similar case. I can just fine tune train it to work on my case. I can test it on the data. It seems to work fine, and there's not really even a thought of like how do these parts fail in certain situations. I think
Right.
um, so when I hear you talk about like, oh, if you have a really good understanding, you theoretically know all the places it could fail. My
Not necessarily. You just know the limits of when you can expect it to work. That's
Okay,
one
yeah,
thing.
the
Like a
opposite.
good
Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
You're right. That's a much better way to say that. I agree with that. But like my personal update from that was making things like circuit breakers, like anomaly detection, things that block the algorithm, or have humans review samples so that these sorts of errors are detected early enough to fix them without too much harm happening to the public. I think yeah, in the limit, what this looks like is a human in the loop system where like any sort of data that's passing through these algorithms, you're consistently 24/7 auditing it, like having a few trusted people examine it, vote on how good it is, and then you're creating alarms based on that. And you have like I write down for instructions for the customer, the people, what to do when you have distributional shift, when you notice things are going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's very much rather than fixing the actual problem, it's a bunch of like measures to mitigate when it fails and just expecting it to fail and like not even thinking how it's going to fail, just being like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's
So I guess to me that's particularly interesting, because I feel like essentially what you've described here and what the difference between the two of you that I'm like picking up on is something that I have heard described or like been described to as sort of like a theoretical and like or physicist and engineering uh like perspective.
I would disagree with that
Okay, well,
because like
what do you mean by
I
that?
think I
Like,
agree with that.
because there's like a specific, at least in my mind, when I say like the pure physics, pure math versus applied engineering. Um, like I have a specific thing I'm thinking about. So, what is it that you oppose?
so I would agree with you if we're talking software engineer. Because software engineers get away with hacking shit and building stuff they don't understand. if you're building bridges, you know the limits of what you're building, and you have a theory that tells you why you expect it to build. It can be an empirical theory. Like it can be something that like you have done rigorous amounts of testing that allows you to kind of like
But
extrapolate.
like what we're saying in this scenario, like with what Chris was describing, is someone doing like yes, there was a situation in which like not all of the bases were covered, but that happens in like even bridge building as well. And like there were more steps that were taken to at least say what the limits were and like how to stop it before it got to a certain point.
So like the reason I'm pushing back against it is this there's this false dichotomy of people like they put it to like bucket things into stuff they can understand.
Yeah.
There's this idea of here over here is theory, and yeah, sure, that's really nice. But here over here we solve real problems and we need to be practical, and we can't do that. And that pattern is something that I am at war with, basically. Because what there is deliberate like risk trade-offs. And what happened in like Chris's case was just like a certain risk wasn't on the radar, and there were like implicit assumptions being made in the way this project was like signed off on. I'm pretty sure if this had been kind of like fraud detection that could have led to billions of dollars being lost, there would have been a bit more like kind of like counterfactuals being explored. But like a system was designed in a given thing with implicit like safety assumptions, and then like the decision shifted and there wasn't really like a process built around that. And part of that is because like in software we're used to doing it this way. Like if shit breaks, it's not that important unless you're working at NASA or like things where actually people can die. And then those places have famously different software engineering like cultures because we have actually like ways of dealing with things like that. And for me, like the bigger like perspective shift is really just like a practitioner needs to know enough to solve the problems they encounter, kind of like. And then if you're a curious practitioner, you might also want to like understand the system underneath a bit more. And then you might end up, if you have like the mathematical type of mind, in this like complete theory lands. Like the people that learn Haskell for fun are like, you know, like an example. But you can also have a very deep, implicit and intuitionist understanding, basically.
So,
but there's a thing of like, yeah.
I get what you're saying. I'm more just trying to, go to what I, something like I guess a paradigm or framing that people can relate to in terms of what the disagreement is surrounding, like what kinds of core ideas it is, and then we can talk about like the nuances of like why we might disagree with that framing.
I don't think we disagree that much.
Yeah,
I think it's just like a difference in experiences where like Chris' knowledge about like what he works with comes from like years of practical like autodidactics, like following things, like exposure and like trying stuff out. And then like my experience comes from partially doing that, but then also just spending like 7 years reading like the whole corpus, not all of it, but like a good chunk of the corpus that we have of like the fields other people have built, and then connecting that to my explorations, because that's what was my job. Like your job was building systems, so you learned like what you needed to build them, and then you learned like a bit more what was curious, but you were also constrained by having to do your job actually. And then like through that we get different like comfort zones on what is like the easy abstraction basically. And like the reason why for me it's kind of like interesting to highlight this thing, and why I also wanted to emphasize like it's not like I want to push back against the thing. I'm very smart. No, like ask Jacob. I say stupid shit all the time. But like when we talk about extrapolation, it starts to matter whether you have like an like experience from a localized thing or from a global thing. And the global thing is usually from many places collected. So it will be the more like theoretical and like rigorous thing, because like math is the same everywhere. So if we're doing the chain that you alluded to of like the superintelligence chain or like the risk escalation chain, then it becomes really dangerous to use these like intuitionist experiences. Like it's a different chain of logic to say, I see this system work well, I see this system work well, I see this system work well. The common thread is they were scaled up. You have like the experience of it keeping working. You don't exactly know why scaling up works, and also when it doesn't work, because like there are cases.
Yeah.
But then you like still have this like very strong model that is completely justified in like your reference frame. And like when it becomes difficult to talk with somebody like me who will basically tell you, yeah, like this and this and this will not work, and it appears to work for reasons that like are not as apparent. Like this example I gave with the causal thing, like a lot of the things where we apply ML are distributions where it doesn't look like these three variables in these perfect equivalence classes. There's more symmetry breaking going on. So then the more important question of like, oh, but can I do it or not, is more like, what fraction of the task distribution is in the part where it doesn't matter whether you generalize, just memorizing the training set would be enough, kind of like for like what we in a sense care about when we talk about risk modeling. I think like I don't care, and I think you also don't care, if most human tasks can be solved by just having a giant hash map. Like just like literally like you take a hash of your input and you return your value.
I was literally about to say this exact thing.
Then like if that is the case, then it doesn't matter whether it really does the thing.
Yeah.
It can still cause problems.
Oh yeah.
And we agree on that. The question is, does it? And that's like the more interesting and actually like kind of like open question to some degree. I think you can give counterexamples where like maybe we should like also like
no, the hash map is actually it's a really good example because it shows there's a spectrum of different algorithms, and the hash map in particular, you're probably not going to be able to have a function that predicts its output at every possible thing, right? Because if it's truly perfect, there's an infinite number of inputs and outputs. So trying to
think about what you just said, like how hash map works.
You have an input, you're gonna look up an output.
Hash collisions exist. Like it can't be infinite. Hash maps are always like limited, basically.
I should reframe and say a lookup table then.
Yeah, sure. Lookup table with infinite like unique keys. I agree with you.
Sure.
There's still then the kind of thing of like the input isn't infinite, really. Kind of like the abstractions start to matter, and kind of like for humans, where you can give like an epsilon of like, let's say in images, it's in like pixel space. In audio, there's like audibility regions. There's like a minimum resolution that actually matters. So you have like at least in the pure what can be put in is in some ways finite. If we say like 10,000 year time horizon, so it's not like loopy time bullshit. There's like incredibly large but finite large possible inputs, and then like only a subset of those are actually interesting to us, and like we can start thinking about that. And I think the hash map thing is also interesting because you can start kind of like pushing it. I think most people would not agree that like the lookup table is AI, right? Like if you literally just like you need to give it exactly the right key, and only then do you get the answer.
Oh, I think that's like irrelevant, right? Most people thinking
Why is it
something
relevant for you?
Most people thinking something is AI or not AI is it just doesn't change. It's not actionable for me, right?
But let's reframe this. Like, I don't think you would be worried about any of this AI we talked about if we were just talking about these like lookup tables where you need to know exactly what you're asking for.
Yeah, in this universe where there's like a limited amount of compute and disk space, this algorithm is not on my radar, right? So
what I mean is like we had stuff like this to some degree in the first AI wave, right? Like kind of like these symbolic systems that had like every input gets its own special
Eliza.
rule, and we like
Yeah.
we accumulate those. And if we were still in that world, I don't think you would worry about it per se, because like let's assume we have
For one,
like
and those systems
close
are
to
deterministic, right? That's like
yeah.
one of the main things. But I mean, I don't know. Something that I think is interesting about like how I'm modeling your worldview right now is
Yeah.
you do you think things would be more dangerous if OpenAI or one of these companies was doing online learning in a way where every time you ask a question, backprop is happening, maybe with a very tiny learning rate? But does this make things less stable for you in a way that makes you more worried?
Depends how well it worked, but yeah, this is one of these things of like a key capability that like makes like an actual agent, like a unit of decision making that operates in the world and that can solve these causal identifiability problems, is if you can do um online learning. What you described. It's not all of it. There's more stuff, but like it would be one of the key things. And the arc AGI and like all of the like test and compute things were like one attempt at doing that. But for me, they flattened out, and like it's relatively clear that we still don't have it. And there's like a reason for it. Like online learning is really difficult.
So before we go on, I just want to jump in. So like Chris, we know you're working like with some with METR, or EquiStamp is like contracting with METR, who's contracting with some of the frontier labs such as OpenAI and Anthropic and etc. And I would assume that maybe some of the like work that you've done on their unreleased models is uh, impacting your world models here as well. And you may not be able to say necessarily that that's true because, you know, NDAs and stuff.
NDAs, yeah. Yeah, I can't really
Um,
comment on like if we're even doing any work on unreleased models. But
right. So let's assume you're not. Um,
yeah, I'll say that like work on how well language models can do AI R&D has really influenced my timelines. I think prior to any of that work, I was already worried about, the possibility of some sort of rogue AI situation causing a lot of harm. Uh, but I was estimating this to be like a 10-year thing, whereas like now I'm estimating that it's like a this year thing.
mm,
So yeah, it's definitely my work feels more urgent than ever. Um,
okay.
I'll say that much.
So the sort of the new test time compute paradigm, because I
Mm,
actually would my personal take here is that um the claim that was originally made essentially by people who are making LLMs was like this LLMs will solve this AGI problem effectively, like we'll be able to do this thing, you know we're disregarding the fact that like that doesn't really mean anything for a second, and just saying this is what was said. um I think we're already in a different paradigm. So because we're now not scaling just um, training compute, we're
yeah.
scaling test time compute. So like if someone says, you know, oh well, we always said LLMs could get us there, and look, now we're much closer. Like I would say, well, you've changed the system.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
in the first place. Like we've made a very substantial change to how it's operating. And so like and like that wasn't what you were saying it was going to do from the beginning. Um the idea was you could continue scaling like training compute, and then you would have this thing at the end.
mm.
And so like to me that actually that sort of introduction of this, substantially more time during inference when we're running the model, um, is worth considering as like I guess a bigger change than just running the model for longer. Um, at least when we consider it. I'm not saying necessarily that means we should like draw any conclusions yet. I'm just saying like
Yeah,
I think it is a very big change, at least to
interesting.
me. I mean,
Yeah, I guess it doesn't feel like that big of a change to me. Um, I I'm trying to think like what would constitute a big change. Something that I was predicting would happen actually would be that time would be incorporated into the way that neural nets actually work. So, for instance, the way your neurons work, it really matters when a signal gets to a particular neuron, like the actual timing, versus like in modern neural nets, it's like a wave of signal all together being propagated. Would you like to?
That's not true. Like there's a whole literature on why like the individual neuron firings don't matter that much, because like if it was like, it's a very classic system. If this was like a precise thing, it doesn't matter. There are timings that matter, but like individual neurons and individuals signals, like the fancy way of saying it is these are like robust coding schemes, and like neural coding schemes are robust both in terms of like neurons misfiring, but also like in timing arrivals on an individual neuron. A single signal, yeah, that matters, but like that signal doesn't matter. So it's kind of like in neural networks, like the artificial ones, like if you train with a high dropout rate, a single neuron dropping out is literally like doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter, yeah.
It's gonna be like whole regions that you need to like block together.
Well,
But he
maybe,
was saying like
yeah, maybe your individual neurons don't matter to you, but like mine do. Every single one matters. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm kidding.
maybe
Yeah,
yourself special, yeah,
yeah.
like they're like prime neurons.
No. Yeah. So I guess this isn't my expertise. So I don't want to propagate false information. I was under the impression that you have kind of two different kinds of neurons in the brain that operate with respect to the time domain. Your eyes have something that the signals kind of coming in waves that's more similar to, like artificial neural nets. But things like further back or deeper or in the prefrontal cortex are doing a thing where it's like a signal has to come from one set of neurons and the other set of neurons, and the time between those signals hitting that neuron matters. If it's a long time versus a little bit of time, you may or not get a fire, and that's feels quite different than the way that things are modeled in neural nets to me. And I feel like I was expecting there to be a algorithm update that did something more like, like fast Fourier transform on each individual neuron, where they're really focusing on timing, or that's at least an important component. Um, that is not the case. I mean, this is irrelevant, but I mean, I'm just showing like a world model and prediction that was really wrong.
sure.
I definitely didn't expect LLMs to go this far, or transformers. Um, when my first exposure, was Attention Is All You Need in 2018,
Sure.
and I immediately started using it and my job. um, but yeah, I was just like, oh, this is just another method in the stream of methods currently coming out to improve on something like LSTM or any sort of recurrent architecture. Um, yeah, so this is definitely really surprising. And now I'm like updating the opposite direction, where I'm like, I don't see any reason why the transformer architecture or this backprop in general can't get us all the way to what we need. Um, I think there's at this point it's like the things that you're describing, like, okay, this test time compute stuff uh, feels really different. That to me feels like an engineering improvement. Like it's like, okay, we notice that having different temperature settings produces different outputs. And if we're looking at the data over time, we see, oh, these people had mostly the same query, and some of those responses to those queries was correct, was what the user wanted, and some wasn't. How can we fix this? And it's like, oh, well, what if we generated multiple responses to the same query and then had a separate model or had some other method for choosing the best one? I mean, it just feels like a really natural solution when you're looking at that data. So it doesn't feel markedly like a big research discovery or something. It feels like just the
So yeah,
dumbest way to solve the problem.
I guess I don't think that it's you know like an incredible discovery. It is sort of like the logical next step.
Mm.
Um, but I still think it isn't just best of n. It's there's some other like reviewing essentially of and like synthesizing information from the or at least presumably, I guess we don't know for sure, but like synthesis of the information, and then like taking the best parts from them and then using that, which is its own feedback loop. So it's not
Oh
like we're
yeah.
just running the model, uh, like
Sorry,
in the
everything.
exact
So
same way, because
what
now
what
it's yeah. Sorry, go
what
ahead.
we know about O1 and all of the other thinking models is basically like you get a bunch of people thinking out loud, you fine tune like on that,
Mhm.
and then you have like puzzles that you can parameterize, and then you like train it with MCTS on top of like normal like LLM fine tuning stuff. So like if anything, like the only change is you now have a way to give it to some degree a stay consistent with previous reasoning signals, because you can use RL to basically tell it, yes, you solved this in this amount of time, and like you can like train it to be more likely to actually notice it did a mistake, instead of having like this set application thing where you know like it did a mistake because that's the embedding state, and then like that's the embedding state, so it doubles down on the mistake if you ask it to correct it. It just always kind of like gets the same thing. And if you this is why for me like these mental models of what's actually ongoing are actually really important, because if you have a classic kernel feature perspective that like all of our learned models are basically fuzzy lookup tables.
Mhm.
They're like fuzzy ones with like a localized hash function, but they basically just like memorize solutions, and then if your query looks similar enough to a previous query, you get like that result back. That's like a meaningful way of talking about most like standard models. And then like if that's the case, then it doesn't matter how often you tell the thing, but this is wrong, if that's not enough to like dislodge it from this like wrong lookup table point. And in order to make corrections actually be salient, you need to train those into the embedding, which you can do via this MCTS element. And then through that and the engineering things that Chris mentioned, you can get something that looks a lot more like reasoning, because it actually treats like corrections as like a can't give the same answer again type. In some cases, like sometimes it also doubles down on things, but like it's not a fundamentally different process at inference time. It's just that the model has been trained to do something slightly different with like if you have this mental model of what it was trained on, you can kind of predict most of O1's behavior and failures like pretty well. This is a very heavy silence. I hope this is like that like people find was interesting.
No, yeah,
Mm.
I'm so the thought process I'm having is synthesizing what you're saying, and also trying to get back towards the most meaningful conversation to have, I guess. Um,
So like just backtracking a bit through the chain of conversations where you talked about kind of like this and this and that would or would not change like your like risk models. Like we had agreed on like competencies and capabilities are kind of like the main thing. We don't really care about the details, and it being like a salient question of like what are the actual capabilities, what are the actual kind of like tasks you can like solve and not. um And like this whole thread around like O1 and was there a change? Was there not a change? Is it impressive? Is it not impressive? Like, does it matter that they changed the algorithm versus like, did they change it that much?
Mm.
Like, I do think it matters in the sense that for me, Jacob was aiming at, which was like, if you look into the original like announcements of like LLMs, it was very much, like, oh wow, we have figured this out. Actually, we don't need all of this RL stuff. We don't need anything else. Language is enough. All of information is in the language. Like all of these like just so stories, like as a technical term. Like why is it enough? Because of what you said earlier about Ilya Sutskever. The whole human history produced the next token, so there's so much information in there that if we can just unlock it, it should be enough to get like AGI. And then that didn't work out. So we smoothly switched over to actually multimodal. Images are so rich, and like the videos and the physical biases embodied in them. And then that didn't work out either. And then what Jacob was saying, oh, one, now we have reasoning and test and compute. And this time it's going to be the thing that really like unlocks it and it's going to get us there, because now we can do self-amplification and all of these other like stories. And like, for me, part of this question was like, doesn't it feel like we're like moving goalposts and like making up excuses for why stuff didn't work out, while at the same time using the fact that we have always continued scaling smoothly as an argument why there's like a risk here? And that is like a crux to kind of like see, like, do we agree that this is like incompatible logic, or is it not incompatible for you? Because for you we didn't really like change that much, so we're still doing the same algorithm, and like for you it was always clear that like the details are like unimportant, and that includes what exact modality we're doing.
Mm.
Or would you say that actually that is like a counterpoint to the risk extrapolation story?
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot there. I would say that
Sorry.
the moving goalpost bit to me is just stupidity. It's people are often bad at like setting goals, following up on those goals, writing down their emotional state, and then seeing how that was wrong and doing proper updates. So yeah, I feel like and then the thing of saying like, oh, they said attention is all you need, and that didn't work. And so then they said, oh, we need to integrate different modalities, and that didn't work. Well, did it not work? Is like what is the immediate thing that comes to my head. I'm like,
it depends on your goalpost. If the point was this is all we need to get to AGI, scaling will now continue smoothly, it didn't work. Like, it's flat out. It doesn't matter how much other stuff we got, because that is literally moving the goalpost. Like what you just said. Like, so kind of like we would need to say, okay, like, what was the goal that we tried it to make it work at?
mm,
And like, so like if the goal was some form of AGI, so far nothing of it has worked. And like all of the curves when we look at them, even if you plot them with a like logarithmic x-axis and a linear y-axis, which is usually like a sign you're doing something wrong. Like that's usually the wrong side of the log to be on.
sure.
They're still flattening out.
Okay. Hmm. I guess I'm just like, this is feeling now like we have very different interpretations of the data. My interpretation is that the thing is working far better than I thought. Like the things that the last version of, the smaller language models, the things they couldn't do that the next ones can do are, I'm not as surprised, but I've been surprised many times over. And so now I'm just thinking like, why shouldn't I predict that these problems that seem blocking, maybe I'll use an exact example. So something from R&D research that we noticed is that if a task takes a human a very long time, like, or I shouldn't say very long, a long time, like 8 hours plus, the frontier models as of November of last year couldn't do them. right? They're scoring extremely low. The humans are superior. So there's something here. I often think of this more just like there's many tokens to go through for a problem that long, and every token could be wrong, and so you get these. What is it called? The compound fallacy, the compound. But basically, it's just like the more ands you have, the more chances that one of those is wrong, or like a really low probability that was the correct thing, and
compounding errors.
Compounding errors. Yeah, sure. So I think that that's still the reason. I'm not sure of that. But the thing that a lot of people are doing is they're figuring out really clever ways to have a model check itself, or a different model check that model, and like crazily reduce each error rate at each point. And so I feel like test time compute is doing that to some degree, and I anticipate that this may be enough to do some like really long timeline tasks. Like I'm talking like 40 hours.
Okay.
And the reason that's so it's weird because we're entering a different, like a surprising world to me again, where it's like I kind of thought once that hurdle was surpassed, I was like believing there would be, like a high probability of intelligence explosion, like maybe 30% chance. I don't see evidence for that as of today. I can say that publicly. Like I don't. But I'm like, now I'm just like a little bit scared because I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of other things. I mean, I mentioned to this or privately, maybe this is like an interesting segue, but I have a bunch of properties and other investments that are non-liquid, and I've started liquidating everything. And I'm doing like the absolute psychopath thing of like my wife and I are looking for more rural properties because we're nervous about how society will react to a lot of white collar automation in the next year or two. So we're preparing to like be out of cities, have control of our power and food supply chain, that sort of thing. And this is like, I'm a very social person. I'm very much a person who like wants to help. Like I'm in AI safety because I think it's the way that I can contribute the most to the world. But I'm also really care about my family and like want to be able to hedge and provide for them in those bad scenarios. So I feel like I'm actively doing things based on these updates. So these are like real beliefs, even though they may seem crazy to you. Yeah, and I'm having trouble explaining what the reason is for the difference.
I have a refinement question
Sure.
onto that, because there's something I want to understand. Basically, there is a way I can kind of understand your actions that doesn't require belief in like an AGI like explosion type thing.
Yeah.
And that is kind of like let's say like investing into like power sources, investing into like companies that drive automation, all of that stuff. That is also compatible if your belief system is basically these systems, if you treat them as industrial, kind of like already standardized decision tree navigators. There's like it's a complex decision tree you need to navigate, but a lot of our society is already pre-configured that like if you do a long enough random walk, you will at some point get to the right thing, and there is actually like a well-defined check condition that tells you yes, you're done. And so like if this exists and it just like all of the theory people are actually correct. You are just brute forcing it with like some heuristics that like make a constant work.
Yep.
But it has moved it into a realm where if you just throw enough capital against it, and you can externalize the cost on the environment onto like other things, it still causes all of the problems that you're talking about. It still makes the investment into power rational, kind of.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering like how much of that is like driving this concept, because that I would get to some degree.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you more about like what's driving it. So, I have other people requesting work. Yeah, I think I don't want to say because but I'll say like people who are like private equity firms or VC firms, and multiple people have said they want things like 0 employee companies.
Yeah.
So they want us to build the system to help evaluate, measure, and track their LLM-based agents. Doing things like automating call centers is some, but there's some more disturbing requests like AI girlfriend apps that
Yep.
want this sort of thing. Um, and there's an increasing number of investors that believe we will in the next year or two have zero company employees with like $100 million valuations. I mean, there's
Yep.
one right now that wants us to help them make that the case.
Hmm.
So it's a over $100 million valuation company, and they think they can have one CEO and no employees.
Hmm.
And so they would literally just be talking to that technical CEO. They have a board referring to him, and then the investors are like, the profit margin is like astronomical because they
Right.
have no labor cost. So this is also concerning for the like white collar automated argument. If like investment companies are looking to do this year, like right now, looking to hire companies like mine to help them do this,
Hmm.
it's just a really scary signal
Yeah.
for society. It's definitely not in my like. This is another effed up thing about people who have my beliefs. That's actually a decent world compared to the worlds that I think could exist. It's like if you believe that there's like truly like really freaking awful things, like everyone dying scenarios are possible, then like a complete dystopian capitalist world is actually that's there's way worse. So
So I guess yeah, I was picking up on this idea of like, and what I was noticing as well, was very tied to this, like all of those things that you said, previously, where you're looking into, essentially making yourself more, your family more self-reliant, so that there isn't as much of like a worry in terms of other things collapsing. Like I think there are a lot of reasons that can make sense in the world where um, the main value of AI systems, at least to the shareholders, um, is the devaluation of human labor. Um, and like that's the default world that I see. Um,
oh
And
wow, okay.
and importantly, it doesn't need to be good enough to actually replace it. Like right now, I think we can agree that like LLMs can generate like slop, so they can fully automate like corporate slop, but they can't yet, like without basically you writing a book, give you like the same type of content that like a human writer can. The question is just like, do people care? And like for things like outlets, you could argue that like the reason why things are being automated because nobody actually cared about the quality. You just had to hire humans to do the writing, and they cared. So you got like quality for free in a sense, and now that is gone. And like we're kind of seeing the actual value function of society that just wants to hear like some positive words about some sports event. So like the sports writer is being automated. Like you don't need to actually reach human parity to massively devalue like human labor.
Oh yeah, that's completely true. Basically, if you have a well calibrated model, you
mm-hmm,
can tune the trade-off where it's like, okay, these maybe there's a bunch of queries coming in from customers or something, and uh, if you have an estimation of how likely the model is to respond with something that is satisfactory to the customer, then you can do the high risk things and send them to people still, and you can do the very low risk things as automated. And these sorts of systems, many people are already doing these sorts of things, but they allow the shareholders or the board to tune things where it's like, okay, uh, each person costs this much, each query to the LLM costs this much, and we can look at our profit margin on how we tune that, and we can also look at
mm-hmm.
our estimated customer satisfaction as we tune that. And so you get these sort of trade-offs where you are able to give like the board or the CEO incredible decision-making power and efficiency, where they are just like, in a lot of cases they're firing like I would say it's low, usually like 70% of the employees that do this sort of work where it's like customer responses or like customer support.
So, and
That
just
the
to clarify, like this is already happening, correct?
Yes, yes. This is happening. Other like my company is not the only one that's entertaining these clients.
Right.
It's actually a big problem for us because we are full of AI safety people who are like uncomfortable with this sort of work, but
Yeah.
it's like very, very lucrative. A lot of private equity firms are willing to do things uh, like profit sharing almost, where it's like, okay, they're blowing $30,000 a day on customer service, and it's like if you reduce that by 90%, they'll give you 10% of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get these like crazy schemes where it's like we just have to implement this system that'll take us 2 months, and then we have basically revenue forever that's in the tens of thousands of dollars a week, you know? Um,
Yep.
yeah, so
And
that
like
being said, like,
that's profitable to them because they got to get rid of 90%
yeah,
or what 70% of their workforce.
yeah, exactly. And I
And
say private
so
equity because they're just much more ruthless. If
sure.
you I mean, they're literally like buying a company, and most of the time the formula is you buy a company, you create some way to fire a large portion of people, and that the company's still operating. Things are in the motion, so it's like you've now just cut up a bunch of your expense, and you likely have the same revenue. And so on paper, you can resell that company pretty quickly before things go bad, before people start quitting because they're overloaded, and have like a really good balance sheet. So it looks like an amazing deal for the next private equity firm, the next set of investors. So they're already used to firing huge chunks. And if you offer a tool or a service where you're like, hey, we're gonna help you fire even more people, and we're gonna show you the exact money you're saving, and we can do it. I mean, this is the other thing they want. They really like if you can offer them zero cost upfront, right? So if on the balance sheet you say, I'm gonna charge you nothing, but I'm gonna save you $30,000 a day, and you'll pay me 10% of that. And if I don't do it, you pay me nothing. Like they love this deal. They absolutely so like companies like mine are like highly incentivized to do this sort of work. And for people like me who are like EA type, less wrong people, and I've sourced all my labor from these types of people, it's like a hotly debated internal topic as to whether like which firms or projects we think are moral
Hmm.
and which we think are just too bad for society for us to stomach. Yeah, still
Hmm.
figuring that out because
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess I think so my I guess world model here goes much more in the sense of like uh social uh dynamics. It that like when I think about this, the main problem that I see like is let us we're already at the situation where that's happening.
yes,
So what then I think to myself, okay, but what does that do? Um, and essentially, at least my like extrapolation here is it undervalues and continues to devalue human labor, and it increases the value of capital
yep,
to
yeah,
the
that's precise, yeah,
point at which we can essentially neglect entirely human labor. If these systems get good enough, which like we can say like we don't care about what good enough is in this conversation,
yeah,
because it doesn't have to be um, like perfect. It just has to be good enough to the point that this could like feasibly happen, um, or at least the threat of it is somewhat salient. If this is already happening, like you're saying, like people are getting fired because their jobs are getting automated, even if that company then goes under 2 years later, or 1 year later, or 6 months later, they still got fired and they
yeah,
can
yeah,
still be told, if you don't do X, we will fire you and replace you with an AI system. And that undermines their negotiating power.
yeah,
And then that is the true value to the shareholder, is that they get to squeeze the workforce for more. So either you get something that's entirely automated, And that is, this sort of, now it's just the cost directly to whoever is running the API. Or you get to threaten that and make your human workers have much worse working conditions, work more hours. Essentially, what's happened in game development, where
Yeah, yeah,
you know, you have people who are super passionate, and because there's so many people that want to be doing game development, the employers get to say, "Oh, you don't want to do what, like 80-hour work weeks as the default? Well, I can
yeah,
fire you and hire someone who will."
yeah,
And so that's essentially what, like, I see as what will happen without very substantial um changes to governance, and like how we consider these systems. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I
so
mean,
go ahead.
yeah, then I'll say like there's like two things I'm doing. One, I'm trying uh oh gosh darn. I'm just trying to think about like what I can say here.
Yeah,
Uh
no worries.
I am our company and other companies like us are in contact with the US government and the UK government. Some people have more influence and are like in contact with more governments and trying to help make recommendations and warning people about things.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, my company has such limited influence compared to, like any other AI company, but I think it helps to prepare for this. I'm really worried about some administrations, like in the U.S. case, the Trump administration uh, is super hard to predict, right? They're very, um,
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, I'm worried about that. And yeah, the most I can do is like there's a lot of reasonable people that work for the Trump administration,
Hmm.
some of which are in my network, and like I just try to bring up like, hey, I think this is going to happen. I think these are the ways we can prepare for it. Like I'm willing to meet with you guys to talk about it. I have data about this that I'm willing to share to prove it. On the backside, I'm like working with companies like METR that are building these evals
Hmm.
and trying to have more accurate predictions about the future and how good the next version of AI will be at like long horizon task, um, and difficult task, which kind of tells us like what percentage of the workforce could be automated. Um, I also think, I mean, this is like a side note, maybe that hasn't been said yet, that maybe is implied by a lot of what I'm saying, but um, I don't think that the one employee CEO company is like possible right now, right in this exact moment.
Hmm.
I think it'll be possible very soon for a lot of companies. Um, I think
I,
with the tech right
I
now, we're
think
more
it
likely to,
depends on. I think it depends on the industry, right? Like
yeah,
kind of like in some industries it is, and in some industries that actually involve like stuff where you actually like need humans as a as a hard thing, or like it like I'm thinking kind of like the girlfriend AI scam thing, for example. Like what you would like what you need for that is a bunch of people who are willing to like catfish vulnerable people for money. So
yeah,
like like you don't
mm,
need anything technical for that. You can outsource the making of it, and then like you can just like do it yourself. You're just scaling up meat in front of a computer that just talks anyway. So that is like a very specific thing that can be fully automated. While like if you are doing like a software consultancy and you have to both like onboard clients, get the specs, make the thing, have it actually perform, have offboard clients, like there's like actual complexity on there, and like that one is probably further out. That would I would be like how I would frame it. Like some of it is it's there right now, and then there's again this question of like what is the thing that's actually being replaced here versus like sure it was a human before, but was it like a human for their abilities or just like in the sense of like um higher order abilities or just like meet at a keyboard with some rough model and just being basically a fuzzy lookup table.
mm, mm. Yeah. I mean, we have very different models on this. So I mostly I think of like even simpler than that.
Yeah.
Things that require actuators that don't exist
Mhm.
are the things that are most safe. And by actuators, I mean like
Isn't like
fingers. Yeah, like
yeah.
yeah, so like fingers or like the right shape for certain terrains. Like okay, how I mean like one is like fishermen, like industrial fishermen. That feels like uh you need to design and build manufacture some device that doesn't currently exist, and the time horizon for that could be years, like even with AGI.
So
Um,
yeah, so for listeners, um, go into ice fishing. It's got a low
Don't
mortality
go to
rate.
ice fishing. Jacob is lying to you. It's the most dangerous profession in America. Don't go to ice fishing.
You will die.
Go into commercial ice fishing. It's a great gig.
The one that I've been telling people is plumber, electrician. These things are still needed. They're like trades that anyone can get into, and at least in the U.S. right now, they're very high paying.
Yeah.
So you can make 200K, which is good for
They,
most cities.
they,
Um,
they will ruin your body over multiple years for
oh
if you're
yeah,
not careful and like putting boundaries.
yeah. I think
But like,
welder I would avoid. I mean, ruins your eyesight, ruins your lungs. But I mean,
but looping back a bit around like the concerns, and so like you described a bunch of stuff, and like we can see stuff is happening, and I think we kind of agreed like one of the things is like AGI is not required for any of this. This is just kind of like the grip of like capital using existing capabilities. Like if we freeze everything right
yeah,
now and just like the current capability level just trickles out into like more PE hands,
yes,
kind of like you might still want to move to a rural part of the US to avoid like the social
yep,
turmoil in a sense.
yes, yeah.
And one thing that I would find interesting is kind of like, what is like your happy ending? Like, but we can't say that. It's happily ever
Ooh.
after because Americans have a weird thing around happy endings. But like regarding the
Yeah,
subject
yeah.
of this kind of like, if
Oh,
we
yeah,
take
yeah.
like for me, it's if we take like let's assume I'm correct in like, but like we're plateauing and we're not gonna get like some explosion. We're just gonna get like logarithmic increasing,
Dude, that would
if
be
at all. That's
awesome.
one.
That would be a happy ending right there. That would be fantastic. Uh,
Okay,
I want you
you
to
have
be right so
intense
badly.
emotions,
Yeah, yeah.
but like when we just said like there's still like societal turmoil on the horizon, right? There's kind of like a happily ever after and worst case scenario in the technology flattening
Yeah,
case, and then there's the like AI keeps going scenario, and then
sure.
again you mentioned your dystopia is like much worse than just capitalist dystopia. And then I assume your happily ever
Yeah.
after is also like different than
Oh,
in
yeah.
this other case. So if
Yeah.
like let's
Have you
yeah,
seen have you
whichever is
seen
more interesting to you.
Pantheon, the animated show? It's by the first Google engineer. Have you seen
I
this?
have not.
Okay,
No.
watch it first of all. But the finale, that is I would say that is my fast takeoff happy scenario. Do you want me to spoil it? I mean,
Well, yeah,
Yes,
yeah. For
spoiler
this,
sure. Okay.
let's spoil it.
Spoilers
Spoiler
for
alert.
everybody. Yeah. I mean, it ends with the main character building a Dyson sphere around a far off star, simulating uh, many versions of the Earth and reviving all their loved ones and just creating basically a utopia. Like, figures out how to create a perfect simulation after about like 100,000 years, and is able to just like get all the people back they lost. I would say that would be like peak winning. So if I am personally able to do something like this, that would be fantastic. Um, I think the more realistic, there's like the more realistic. Okay, we're kind of maybe we're tapering off. Maybe there's way different limits to how far AI technology can even scale our intelligence. Um, I think the happy path looks like it turns out AI automatically doesn't do harmful things. Like part of it having more weights or having more competence or intelligence, whatever you want to call it, is that it cares about other beings and it doesn't cause harm for some reason. Like there's just something inherent to the universe that makes this true. And so it helps us develop cures to aging very soon, hopefully, so that I can have my parents around for a while. Um, Maybe it solves a lot of other like suffering problems in the current world. Um, I think that this looks like people aren't dying from dumb things. People aren't going to war over trivial things. People are able to like build the dream versions of themselves, either through simulation or through having a long time to live and experiencing things and working on themselves and not being tied to indentured servitude or being a wage slave or whatever it is. Yeah, I think the less happy paths have like a lot of things. For some reason, I have trouble even thinking about the suffering worlds. Like it's just like hard for me to fathom.
Before we go
Oh
there,
yeah,
because let's say in Happy Land just a bit more,
okay,
what's like in the AI tapers off now,
yeah.
like kind of like the bubble pops this year, and kind of like we
Whoa,
get the
that would
current
be
tech
awesome.
plus like slow improvement.
Yeah,
But then there's still all of the turmoil, all of the like NSA surveillance.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
still like weaponized robots. So kind of like,
Oof.
what is like your best attempt at like a kind of like boring, realistic, happily ever after
Oh yeah, yeah.
for us?
Okay, so I think in that scenario, the hopeful happy ever after thing happens because of a bow shot. This is other people use this term. I may have coined it independently, but the idea is that like some AI system does something really bad, like worse than Flash Crash, but not as bad. Maybe not as bad as like Hiroshima. So
It
like
kills a rich person.
yeah, it kills Elon Musk, and all the Elon Musk fanboys are rioting in the street and ripping off all their clothes and yelling, and
It's Luigi GPT.
yes, Luigi GPT comes out. Yeah, so the rich are getting eaten, the guillotines out in every square in America. Anyway, I think
the populace manages to rally behind this idea
yeah,
of this is bad.
yeah,
We don't want to give this kind of power to this system, whether
yeah.
or not that's motivated by, you know, the rich people pulling the strings is up for debate. But then that is what's happened. There has been a bad thing.
Yeah.
Now society
Gosh, yeah,
caught on.
I want to be more specific and less like have less humor about this. Like, what exactly is the bad thing?
Sure.
I do think it's something like a misinformation campaign that causes many deaths. So, like, the companies that seem most reckless are companies that operate by making trading algorithms. It seems like they're often deploying agentic versions of LLMs that are literally, in my opinion, manipulating the market. And these algorithms, it doesn't seem far off to me to there's multiple companies bringing these online all the time, and there's just some probability that any one of them might do something like make a campaign that goes very viral that causes mass panic and confusion to where like many different cities have many deaths. And it takes a while to figure out the origin of this information, the origin of the false news. And I think that's actually something that is, if I had to guess, I would say that scenario is like the thing that causes the bow shot, or is the bow shot. I think that maybe this is like 1 out of 1,000 chance. There's like so many different possible scenarios, but
wait, like so like this is a bow shot, and then what causes it? Because like we're in the world right now where we don't need anything to stop people from building AI because it just doesn't work. Like it doesn't go AGI because like not because nobody's trying, but because actually people are trying and it doesn't work as expected and it flattens out, and we're just like stuck with like only all of the knowledge of society at our fingertips with an NLP query. But it still hallucinates that you can just like do certain things and like can't update fast enough to be like.
You're right. I'm not operating well in your hypothetical. I apologize for that. Okay, backing up, deleting. Yeah. Okay,
I liked it. I thought it was good.
Maybe it was entertaining value, but it wasn't exactly on topic. So in the planning off scenario, I think the happy path is we use the current versions of LLMs to help us do important research and work more efficiently. So it's like, yeah, we get some automation. Maybe some governments realize 50% unemployment in young men is like super dangerous, and so they stomach some like more welfare type programs that help prevent this, I think that's a happy path. And we also get maybe again things like cures to aging or cures to disease that are really, you know, reduce suffering incredibly. I think there's even some problems like people often take for granted like business type innovations, like I mean things like agile
Containers.
development. Go, yeah. How would you like to say?
The container shipping would be my
Yes,
thing. Just
precisely.
like the
Yes.
idea of a standardized
Yeah,
box.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So I think there are innovations like this, like it's really surprising to me that Africa is still in such poor shape in several countries, and I feel like there's probably some business innovations that work for the psychology and culture and infrastructure that exists there that just turns like it eliminates suffering within like 5 years in the countries that still have high suffering. Uh, so I think like that happens.
Mhm.
um,
So
yeah, there's
before we go into the bad space,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
like a meta observation I would like to make, and because I have like a thing afterwards, and like I want to like work on framing it not as like gotcha thing, but as a this is interesting, and it's like uh everything I just described. Like I don't know if you have like the causal chain on how that happens in detail. Like in all three of these scenarios, you describe kind of like the end state,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
then like very high level, like again these like vibe
Okay.
chains,
Yeah. Yeah. So
and like
vibe
I
chains.
don't going to the intro when I try to like explain like these different lenses. Like for me, what is missing there is like like the hard kind of like you don't skip over things that aren't justified to be skipped by like grounding abstraction. There's just like somehow we cure aging, where like whether or not that's physically possible, like
Yeah.
we don't know, or like somehow we decide to do this, but you didn't kind of like go into the chain of things for the decision making, and that is like fine. But I just wanted to kind of like put that there because I want to use it like as a like callback later. If you
Sure.
want to respond to it, I'm happy, but we can also go into the doom scenarios if you want.
Yeah. I mean, is this like a version of it's like if I knew the exact path to cure aging, given the current technology, like I would just cure aging, right? So it's kind of like
So
I don't really understand the distinction. I mean, I could go into as much predictions as possible, but they are probably wrong.
I
And
so I'm gonna try to use something from business for kind of like you don't have a micromanagement plan for business things or even just like bigger problems usually, because it's futile, because you're not gonna like be able to like pre-plan everything that you're gonna encounter on the way to get there, right? And then if you're doing research, like actual like research, like pushing the boundaries of your knowledge, you don't know what you're gonna find by definition.
yeah,
But you can still have, like there's a difference between like a research plan, which is like because of like let's take a recent example, like 3DAO was working on like scalable variations of like recurrent networks for years, and like kernelized because there was like some underlying things that either like they knew or they had a vibe about of like, oh, I think like getting the operations really adapted to the hardware is a good idea. And then like after a couple of like years of research, you get like flash attention that didn't come from nowhere. It was like iterative go
yeah.
there, but there's like a vision that was a lot more detailed than just make computer go brr. There was like hypothesis
Yeah, yeah.
behind it, and then like
Okay,
there's like
I'll give my
more detailed
hypothesis.
than somehow and not
Sure.
figuring out all the details.
Yeah, I'll say my hypothesis. I mean, this is just like I don't know. Can I say that I'm making a prediction for the fun and the sake of this conversation? But like, I mean, this is like low
Yeah,
credence. Um,
yeah.
my model is that even the current versions of models that are about to be released will make people so much more productive
Mm-hmm.
that people working on these problems right now, like solving aging, curing cancer, figuring out the best structures in like charter cities or things like this that could solve societal issues, uh, those people are going to be so productive that we are much more likely to get to build out the rest of their tech trees. So
Mhm.
the reason I think this is because my personal development speed, business building speed, has been insanely magnified by utilizing LLMs, right? So that I'll give you an example in the last day with a particular company. They on the phone gave me some requirements, and just while I was talking to them, I gave GPT Pro or Claude or something my past contracts with companies, and then the new information for this contract, and I write a legal contract. I can then just send that to someone like a lawyer or something and be like, review this, make sure it's right. And now I've that person's usually in the past I'd have to be like have a meeting with this person, like explain all the different things, be like, I need this contract. They go into their database of templates and then they edit this template and send it back. And it's really expensive. And now I get maybe there's 2 minutes of extra work after that call with the customer to have a legal document that specifies exactly what they want, our terms and privacy and everything. It's all worked out.
Mhm.
So it's I see this as there's in any research field, there's a bunch of bogus that you have to do, whether it's applying for grants, um, you know, grading all your students' papers, all this stuff that's the LLM does reasonably well enough. And if you are utilizing these tools well, you get to focus on the most important work. You just put way more time towards it. And so I anticipate that we'll get this productivity boost, especially this year. I think another thing that's people aren't doing enough is there's this bias that I have really bad, but other people have it too, which is the first idea you think of feels better, and it's hard to have the creativity to break out, just see the different world and see all the other possibilities. But
Yeah.
you can leverage language models to just destroy this, to you're
Yeah.
you have a solution, you're stuck on this idea, and you ask for 10 solutions to the same problem from GPT, some model, and you ask it you say things like, okay, pretend you're a schizophrenic. You go way out there, what are the crazy ideas? Pretend you're Dr. Seuss. What are the crazy? You just really expand your space, and you look at these things and you converse. And I think there's a bunch of really smart autistic people that can refocus themselves into the most the best path. And so that's not only are you going to be more productive at the individual things, but you're going to be better about your search, and it's going to be easier. It's just a skill that I don't have that now I have
Mhm.
access to, and I'm very excited about, because I'm
Yeah.
well, before I had to do the Steve Jobs thing where you get a bunch of smart people in a room and you purposely don't reveal your thing because you'll bias the people, and you have to be like, oh, there's a problem I don't know how to solve, and you try to make sure the introverts talk first so you don't bias them, and then you let the other people, or you ask people to write down ideas ahead of time. And now I just have the model. And I'm when I go to the people, I'm like, hey, here are these solutions. I vetted them. Can you implement X thing? If you have something else to say, you know, it's just so fast.
What you just said, I like that. That's what's missing for me in these conversations quite often, because you describe a causal chain that has testable assumptions to it, and instead of just arguing with you, oh, but no, this is not the real thing, I can just say, okay, I see that on these types of tasks, the ideation, the bullshit, the gluing over bureaucracy. Another big boost that I can see is
Paper consumption,
people.
summarizing papers. No, that's not.
No, that one not, because that one actually requires you to internalize ideas if you want to get deep into it, and that
Sure,
it might
sure.
help with that for some people.
Yeah.
But I was thinking more interfaces. Some people
Mm.
just are really bad with text, people with dyslexia, and they now
Oof.
can interact with computers. Or I have a friend who works with people in the global south. Illiterate people can actually do bureaucracy now because of voice mode. If you get it cheap enough. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all of it. All of it stuff is real. There is details. If we had more time, we could argue about is this enough to kind of do this big acceleration, and none of this is really bringing us to any of these utopias per se, because you can also just see that basically going oh yeah, cool, super efficient authoritarian lock-in, even more efficient like PE that can like hyper rationalize everything and nothing trickles down because like let's be real, it doesn't unless it's shit. So like you're a nice guy, and like I see like a lot of people who are like smart and nice guys in this, but like especially in America, to me, like a lot of people who are anxious about AI safety, they're just anxious about like authoritarianism and capitalist dystopia without having like the like political appetite of like, okay, like actual democracy means like everyone, even the stupid uncle, gets to like participate, and you need to kind of like negotiate with that. And you actually need to ask yourself, how much taxes are you willing to pay for that whole human life and dignity thing?
Yeah.
And like AI safety is something technological that is both a deus ex machina that gives you the out without having to confront all of these problems, and also like a boogeyman that is like not the one that is politically inconvenient, which is like rich people, but like some AI that goes crazy instead of just saying, yeah, like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk are gonna like put more and more detailed control into their factories, and are gonna like in one of these people's cases offer ponies to employees who can't refuse anymore. like that dystopia is very salient to me, and I can see the causal pathway for that one. But I can also see that like if you're in a position where like like your whole career as a like software engineer type person in the US depends on technology being able to fix everything, and like capitalism working the way it is, that it's like it's a lot more difficult to go towards that discussion than like AI safety stuff. Also because it is very messy. I'm not saying that I have like the solution there, but like even the conversation is something that is like discouraged in a sense. And that's like my hot take on AI safety, and like
I
the
think
vibe that I get.
I think it's more than discouraged. I think I already identified this weakness I have, which is like I have trouble breaking out of my frame of thinking. Like I need this is like a superpower to me when I use the model. So like one of those things is like the culture that I'm in. It makes me a certain kind. I mean, Americans are a certain kind of optimistic, a certain kind of trusting in democracy, a feeling of superiority over the rest of the world, a type of superiority. It's not like the French, but it's it's something that it's just hard to break out of. I think that that being said, I just like have this idea that like my my view of things is like flexible enough to still apply. This feels wrong. I should be like more questioning my beliefs and predictions of the future. But I will say some things like maybe this helps me be more trusting. But I'm not a big believer in the types of democracies that currently exist. I think they're mostly trash. I think there is some version of democracy.
I'm in Switzerland, dude. Like I live in what I think is the best one. So like
nice. Yeah.
If you're talking about the US one, sure, but
yeah, the US one, I think you hinted at what I consider the biggest problem, which is that the crazy uncle has the same say in matters as the best civil engineer in a matter of building bridges.
So like I'm giving you an opt out of this conversation.
Oh, okay.
But like this is like an interesting one for me.
Oh yeah, it's interesting for me as well.
If you don't want the crazy uncle to have the same voice, or like the garbage person, then you're not really talking about democracy.
Oh yeah, that's fair. I mean, those are tenets of democracy that are kind of like universal when people think of democracy, but I think that my ideal form of democracy is like weighted. If
you're talking about a market.
yeah, exactly. I don't like the market though because of like trust fund babies. You get these like really idiot people who have tons of power and money. So that's problematic. But as you might suspect, because I'm an evaluations person, I like the idea of measuring many different types of knowledge and talent, and then
So an
giving people,
idealized meritocracy.
yeah, exactly, a meritocracy, where it's like,
But do you think that will not be biased by whoever is in power and who does the measurement?
I think if I was in power, I wouldn't be biased. That's a joke.
Right.
That's a
Good.
joke.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's absolutely an issue. It's like this is like one of those things where it's like you're shifting the complexity from one place to another, and you're like, I've solved the problem, and I'm shifting the complexity to the evaluation system, like that being fair and
And you're like one more importantly, you are just completely abandoning the every man created equal idea and
well,
everyone mattering equally and everyone having like the same rights that should have like the
yeah,
same things. But as soon as you
yeah,
introduce this weighting that isn't delegated
yeah,
by
yeah.
voluntary thing,
So
you're kind of abandoning that.
yeah, I would argue that people already don't act like that. Like they don't actually believe like that. Their actions show otherwise. Um, depending other different humans have different value to each individual. And that value can have to do with familial
But our
relations.
system right now gives everyone the same vote.
That's true.
Theoretically.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. That's a problem.
But you're just saying kind of like humans value each other like differently.
Yeah,
And then if you think humans are actually like worth the same and kind of like their a priori their opinions matter equally,
I
then you
don't
should say
think
like
that.
our system. Okay, yeah, but
Yeah,
then like you're abandoning that value and you're not talking about democracy. Like what you're talking about is kind of like I think that can be horribly abused. Like I'm gonna just like be a bit like more fronty right now, also to like move things along. Is like what you're talking about is for me like the classic thing of like you're thinking of a system that you kind of know it's like the market where you see yourself as like the good one that's going to be higher weighted and
yeah.
like like I have like diagnosed autism and ADHD. I would be pre-selected by a weighting system to not have a say.
Oh no,
And I don't
you would have an
think
incredible amount of say in my system.
no, trust me. Like I can convince you of this because I live in a country that has like socialized healthcare that gives me
Sure.
meds and everything that makes me function.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like in the system that you're designing, there's somebody like me who is just somebody's bitch and has no chance of escaping, and therefore, when kind of like playing this out game theoretically wise, you're gonna get like more and more like Luigi's because why should we abide by that social contract? So like for stability's sake, but like the whole democracy thing, people who are like in your position don't appreciate how much the man can fuck you if you don't have like all of these like
Attributes.
protections often.
Yeah.
And like this like equalizing thing.
Sure.
And the main reason why like you think it works out well is that like you personally haven't been fucked over enough yet. And this American indoctrinations scheme, in my view, I should say, but
Okay.
I think it's like correct. And then kind of like that's kind of what keeps you stuck in this framework of like the only thing you can think in is basically a company and like the centralized decision making of a CEO and shareholders and like somehow meritocratic because like the lie that keeps the like capitalist system going as it is right now is that in some way it's a meritocracy where like trust fund babies exist, so that's wrong. Like I believe you that you're like a nice guy and that like you would be in favor on some level, or maybe it's a conjecture, but like 100% inheritance tax. Just everybody starts with the same amount of like starting capital, and then like you let stuff play out. If you do something like that, you're starting to get some form of a approximation of a meritocracy. And if you do a bunch of other stuff, you can do some form of like market-based system whatsoever. But like if you start with not everybody is equal the same, like you're just creating like the target for the real psychopaths. Like the people that are gonna like use that to disenfranchise the enemies and concentrate power.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So there's like most of what you're saying I believe to be true, but only because of a few things. So one of the things is that a single person can communicate with billions. This is actually problematic because it makes the people, the really charismatic psychopaths, able to rise to the top in a meritocracy, or like no matter what your metric is, like it has some flaws, and those flaws will surface themselves to the top.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can also lie to a billion people,
yes,
right?
yeah, exactly. So my thinking is that do you know Brian Kaplan, the economist? He has
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So this whole thing of like keyhole solutions, where he's like, I believe in open borders, and then it's people are like, but what about letting in criminals? And then he's just like, don't let in criminals. Like he's just like, open borders for everyone except criminals or something. Or it's like maybe we have a thing where it's like, okay, mostly men commit the crimes, women commit almost none of the crimes, so open borders for women. It's just like you start slicing it until you get the thing that like you just want to like regulate only the things that are broken. And so when I think about systems like this, when it comes to democracy or meritocracy, I mostly think that democracy doesn't have enough like little tiny solutions fixing the issues, or the solutions aren't up to date with our current technology. Something like convicts in the US can't vote. Like Donald Trump can't vote legally. That to me seems ridiculous. Because it's too broad of a swath, right? When you could be so much more precise.
That depends on the states, right? And kind of like
sure,
yeah,
sure.
But like I agree with you. But like for me, the solution is like more democracy, because like if you think in these extreme limits, it's kind of like if you have full democracy, and you also like one thing you can do is you can put a constraint on like the size of your megaphone.
Yep,
because that's
exactly.
not required.
Yeah. So the way that I would do that, here's an exact system I imagine that I've discussed with friends. You should only be able to vote for someone you know personally, and I think that person could then use your vote. You should be able to allocate your votes.
Yep.
I would prefer a direct democracy where, rather than having a central leader that decides who we nuke and everything, you have different sets. In the US, there's like cabinets. So there's like an energy, there's an education bit, and it's like there are many decisions those people make that influence laws. So if instead we could directly vote on those things, but you cannot vote for any, you can allocate your vote to someone you know, I think we could have a thing where we're less likely to allocate our votes to a psychopath. And you're more likely to pick the person who's the most expert that you know at education or whatever.
What you're describing is a thing that people are trying out as like liquid democracy and stuff like that. But one question for you: do Facebook friends count?
I would say
like
no.
YouTube followers.
I would say no. I don't think so. That seems ridiculous
so, like,
to me.
No parasocial relationships.
It's kind of, maybe that's too general, but yeah, probably not. I think.
Or like celebrities who meet like millions of people at a show.
No way.
Now they've kind of like
disqualified if you're a celebrity.
So the thing is, like, I empathize with the solution, but like for me, one of the easy fixes right now, concretely in this system, is like make Facebook responsible for user-generated content. And therefore have them massively scale down and just like remove viral algorithms and like slow down information propagation.
I interviewed for the newsfeed team years ago for a position where I could, like be a part of the redesign, and this was post things like Myanmar genocide or other things where it was like largely influential. And this is exactly what I proposed to them, which is that rather than have these different knobs of the newsfeed algorithm be tuned to time on app, we just literally give an interface to the user that shows them the knobs, and we say you can tune this exactly how you want. This to me is like a freedom maximizing thing, where it's like some people want to be addicted. They want the most addicting thing. They want the funniest thing or whatever, and they're okay being on the app a lot. And you give those people the freedom to do that. But the other people that are really concerned about maybe their children's addiction to media or something like that, they can also tune those knobs. So I think I feel like the way you characterized my idea of like going more towards a meritocracy than a democracy, you maybe implied that I don't respect people's freedoms, and I actually very much do. Like I would only do a system that people could opt into if I had the power to like implement something like this.
So like the only reason why I said like you don't really want democracy is because you want like an a priori weighting or something
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. Like if it starts with like everybody has the vote and then there's like a system that is like can be a delegative system, but like still like a priori everybody is worth the same and you can't buy votes for because that's like basically the megaphone. You know, like
Yeah.
people being able to have an audience is basically being able to buy
A vote with social
influence.
capital. Yeah.
Social capital, real capital, like the
Yeah,
only
yeah, yeah.
reason why anybody listens to
Elon
like
Musk.
the elongated muskrat is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the capital. So
yeah.
like so we agree on that, and like my main thing is kind of like now if you think about AI, like one AI thing that's actually here is like the Facebook algorithm.
Yes.
And I talked to people years ago who were convinced that like the YouTube recommendation algorithm is purposefully dumbing down humanity. By which they didn't mean it is easier to drive up engagement if you give people like like basic content and then like that drives down the attention span and like feeds their worst urges by accident. They meant that the YouTube RL recommendation system has a causal model of humanity, has fully reasoned out that if they serve a certain sequence of videos, it's going to dumb down humanity and that's going to make their job easier. And like that to me is basically what an example of these like frame-based kind of like fallacies of like because they're a technical person, they kind of like over ascribe stuff to the technology and not so much to like the world around it or humanity or like other motivations.
I see.
And
So you
like
think I'm doing this as well?
yeah, I think like most of your like utopias, the main
Component was
big question
technological.
mark. Sorry?
The main component was technological.
Is like, oh yeah, like once the technology is fixed, everything else will be
Fall
sorted
into
out
place. Yeah,
somehow.
yeah, yeah.
And then like most of your dystopias,
Dude,
like
no, yeah.
we kind of have those almost, or we don't need a technology for it to go bad. We just need like the political part to go badly. You know, kind of
Yeah, yeah, so true.
like the hardcore X risk ones. Sure, those are like boogeyman stories that
Yeah,
you can tell
yeah,
yourself
yeah.
to like be scared of AI, but they're also safe in a way because they can't actually happen.
Well, we can't do
Whereas
anything about them. Is that what you mean?
that as well,
Oh,
but kind of like you don't have a clear like imagine like you can imagine like let's not say Trump because it's like a bit too charged, but you can imagine Xi Jinping like going like full Hitler and annexes Taiwan and like starting like a whole war situation, or like Putin going crazy. Like nuclear war is terrifyingly real
yeah,
since
yeah.
2022.
It's a
So
model.
that's actually anxiety inducing for people to think about
Sure,
dealing with that. Or
sure.
climate change. Like California just burned down partly and like the wildfires. And that's actually happening. But in order to solve that, you actually need to deal with all of the mess that you just described. You know, like all of the megaphones in the hands of billionaires, all of the like centralization of power.
Sure.
And that feels so disempowering that like people don't do it. And instead like and I think it's not a bad thing. I'm not criticizing it, but I'm just trying to like share my frame of it. Like you're trying to fix a problem that you can see, and like I think you're also like trying to fix things that are like salient
Yeah.
by working in this field. And that's like I think fine. Like I have a thing I like to call robustly good things that are like timeline independent. Like if you put like a EU AI Act style thing into the US, which like just like disallows using biometric markers for certain things. It's just like you're not allowed to do them, period, no matter how nice it would be. You rule out a lot of like AI risk type scenarios as well. And if you just place liability for AI systems on the companies until they prove safety, like we do for like bridges with like some independent panel,
Evaluators.
if
Yep,
you
yep,
do
yep.
that, you also slow down the AGI risk immediately because suddenly you can't just like YOLO it. So those things exist, but those would also like kind of like hurt the bottom line. They would actually meet resistance.
Yeah.
You know, like regulating OpenAI actually would be an actual kind of like fight. So instead, people sort themselves into what feels like salient or tractable, not so much because like it is actually, but because at least they don't know the problems there. They have like this hopium of like being able to save the world from some imaginary risk that they even amplify to justify going for that. That's like my hot take on why like most of the AI safety stuff is mainly just like end stage capitalism and authoritarianism kind of risk being projected onto technology. And there's actually like previous like stuff in history. Like people used to ascribe like headaches and like wrist damage and stuff like that, and like breakdown of society to the fountain pen because it made writing easier
Sure.
and made like bad ideas spread faster instead of like it being a technology and like bad ideas just being out there in society. Sorry, this was a bit of a ramble, but like I would be interested in like your response, and we would like have to give you like the last word on that, because like this is for me like the crux of the things. Like you're a
Oh,
smart
dude, yeah.
guy.
I'll say that I really like your characterization of my utopias and dystopias, like because I it feels so salient. Sometimes, you know, a lot of my job is reviewing employees' code. And it's like there's a project or something, and I just have this idea. I'm like, if I just finish this one thing, I just one code and it gets in and everything works, everything's gonna be great. You know, it's like I
Mm-hmm.
feel that prior. After I push it, I don't really feel that as much. But like before that, I have this feeling, and it's very similar to the technology thing where it's like, oh, if we just cure aging with this, you know, fancy new technology, I have
It's
no idea how it
one
works.
weird
Yeah,
trick.
there's one weird trick. Yeah, exactly.
Doctors hate him.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so I mean, that feels real and it's kind of funny, so I like it. I'll probably use that. Um, yeah, it's you know, this is like a thing where it's so hard to judge your own world models objectively. Like the one of the lenses I often do is like, how many people do I know will think this is crazy? And I feel like I can't update on that. Like I'll notice it. I'll be like, wow, too many of the people I respect think that this is dumb and crazy. And then it's like I still like, well, I can't.
Yeah, but
I
they're
feel like
probably
that's not
wrong.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like I'm not either mature enough or something else is wrong with my brain that I can't update appropriately, or maybe I'm just too afraid to be mid. Maybe it's a cultural thing. You know, there's like I think there's a lot of people in Less Wrong like this that want to you know, be special or be outliers or contrarians or something like that. And I
Yeah.
definitely have that gene, so it probably hurts updates.
And like part it's also like part of your job depends on being compatible with both like that crowd and like the system that you're in, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I could like if I could just like swallow the Kool-Aid, I could have joined like the AI safety thing years ago. I was hanging out with like Nora Aman, who is now like working with Davidat in the UK. Like I was hanging out with like EAs. I could have just like, drunken down that Kool-Aid, and I could have like probably like worked at Anthropic for
Yeah.
years, and I could have made my whole PhD differently.
Yeah, yeah.
But like being correct does not a priori pay the bills. And then like there's
Oh
this
yeah, yeah.
whole
Yeah.
additional cognitive skill of like living under capitalism while knowing that it's actually not the best possible world and it's not justified, and you need to constantly make this trade-off of like that you face in your company now, like
Dude, yeah.
that like it's draining, and then you can just opt out by just like not seeing reality as clear as you maybe could, by just like no, actually, like I'm not going to update on that thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mm,
And I'm not judging it at all. Like this is
yeah.
like a human
I,
thing that is like it is genuinely
I'm
stressful.
not sure if I agree with that. The main thing I think about like I mean if you're a market sell, you kind of think like if I was actually correct, I'd be a billionaire because I'd be like trading options with perfect accuracy and
Uh-huh.
turning my like $200 into $200 million within like a year.
That's not fully true though, no?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Like
depends
like
on
like
what you believe about the market, like how perfect the market is and things. But um,
what are we correct about here? Kind of like if I say kind of like if my take is basically like capitalism globally is like inefficient and
yeah,
causes like suffering, and like most of the actual X risk are caused by that, I can't directly trade on
yeah,
that
yeah,
unless I'm already a billionaire, because I
yeah,
need
yeah.
like
That's
like
this is true.
0.5% thing.
Um, yeah, I guess what I was maybe conflating a little bit there was that if you are right about that, it's maybe like not many people believe that. If you're going to give yourself like credence and high certainty, you might notice that on many other things that you can test, you're often right where other people aren't. And so you're just like, oh, I'm like a well-calibrated, smart person. And if you are such a person, then it should be easy for you to make money morally, just making trades like in basic markets. I guess this is very, I'm giving you just I'm not saying this is true. I'm giving you like my model that is maybe.
If you have a starting capital, if you have access to the market,
Eh,
if there's no other things if everyone
sure.
else is competing fairly, like there's a lot of ifs there.
Yeah, maybe. It's like this is a thing I like. I've done a couple surveys about privilege. Americans care a lot about this. Like there's like race privilege, gender privilege, and there's country of origin privilege and parental capital privilege. So like when you kind of list all the things that are very common, people end up rating things that they talk about a lot. Like race privilege is actually quite a few steps down in like they'd rather be black and a millionaire than like white and poor. So like obviously the money matters more than this thing. And yet Americans worship rich people. It's very contradictory and like
I mean, do they worship them or do they have to suck up to them? And there's a whole industry to idolize them, and like the rich people own the media, so they also make sure that continues. Like,
yeah, I guess
like it's not like you had multiple like active like campaigns against like alternative political systems like the Red Scare or anything in your past, right? Like,
yeah, I guess
also, like just recently, they started killing the rich people. So like, I'm not sure if that statement is like as unqualified true as you said.
damn,
And that guy,
checkmate.
and that guy isn't being viewed as a pariah who kind of
Sure.
like went against the market order. Like,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, this is another bias that I recognize in myself. Like, I notice after surveying people, my exact ranking, I ranked IQ much higher than my more normal friends. And I noticed other people in less wrong or in these communities also ranked IQ almost certainly too high. Like, if you have Einstein level IQ and you're born a woman in Afghanistan, you're almost certainly still fucked. You're not going to be
yes.
Jeff Bezos. Just it's not going to happen. There's just not enough probability. It doesn't square. So like and yet I just have this feeling. I just have this feeling that you would.
Yeah.
Which is also
like,
I don't know why I have that feeling,
Like, I can give you my explanation if you care, and it's about identities. Is kind of like everybody grows up, and we're monkeys, right? And then we kind of like try to survive in a world. So like our parents tell us some stories, and we try some stuff, and some of it works. And then like we all make our like narrative. And like one big part of like identity building is like learning what you're not. Kind of like identities are formed from rejecting certain things, and then another part is like finding what makes you special. And if you are kind of like compatible with the world in a certain way, that like certain things are easy to you, right now our society calls you smart. And then that becomes really important to you. And there's like multiple ways we can play. Like I like to call like one instantiation like the perfect little boy, perfect little girl syndrome, where like, you're like this anxious test taking type that is like, I did horrible on the test. Okay, straight A, like 100% every single time. But then they're also like struggling in the real world because now there's no more clear thing to learn towards.
Sure.
And then like there's that. And then there's like you, me, like our kind of like demographic, but like a lot of our like confidence comes from like being able to figure shit out and being right. Like the thing is that like you're well calibrated and like you make a prediction or you say something, it's usually correct. And a lot of that is often just knowledge. Like I'm not smart. I just read a lot of shit and I have a good memory. Like I am the Chinese book. And like like I had the great luck of when I was trying out for like a gifted children's program. Because of the autism IQ, I actually like scored below the IQ threshold. But this was Germany, and we're a bunch of dirty communists. So like they actually talked to every single child, and they just if somebody had like the right vibe, they were like excited about being there, or like struck them as, okay, yeah, this one should get a bit more stimulation, they just slotted you in there. And this was like when I made my first friend as a kid, like singular friend.
Nice.
So like that saved me, and I had a conversation with him afterwards, and they explained this to me, and it just stuck with me to this day. That like IQ is bullshit, because it's like and I actually have this mathed out now. I like, if you want, I can send you the write up. I have like a whole talk about it. Like IQ, it's just how you measure somebody, how well adapted they are to the world, and then you call that into like capability or intelligence, and the G factor thing. It's just correlation between tasks. Because like, would it surprise you that in a society that is internally consistent, the tasks that are being tested have correlation?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't surprise you.
Yeah, of course,
of course.
of course it has correlation. Yeah.
And like, if you look at the way IQ is defined, you can't distinguish between correlation between the task and correlation between the thing. And there's always, which is why it always like vanishes, all of these different effects, they go away once you start like internalizing this thing. You are on less wrong, you know what the Flynn effect is, you know, like a lot of this stuff. And then the main reason why it survives is what Thomas Piketty is like a author who does a lot about like inequality, and he has a book called Capital and Ideology, where in the intro he talks about what an ideology is. An ideology is the story you tell yourself why the obviously injustice thing that you're observing is actually okay. So like, you look around and you see like horrible suffering in the world,
mm-hmm.
in your surroundings as well, where like the system that is benefiting you is obviously fucking these people. So then you need to ask yourself, why is this okay? And then you say meritocracy, or they went against Stalin, so therefore they deserve to die. Like, you know, like different ideologies will have different lies that they tell.
Sure.
And IQ is one such thing where like we used to say just noble blood, you know, like being born rich made you better by breeding. And then we kind of stopped that, and we partially have a French.
We needed something, so we had to invent G.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And like, if you look into the history of it, like the whole story is completely backfitted to like explaining these and things, and like the more you actually do science on it, the more you realize, oh, actually all of this is bullshit, and then you need to come up with new justifications why actually it's now critical race theory invading the hard sciences, and we should just ignore all of that.
And you know, like, this feels very true, just because of like how my friend group uses IQ, which is like literally to figure out who's, you know, like I'm smarter than this group of friends. Oh, dude, there was a great. Do you know Ayla? Or
yes.
Basically,
I don't.
Okay, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. There's a group of like Austin people. I live in Austin, Texas, and
gotcha.
there's someone did a verbal survey at a big mega meetup with all the less wrong people, and the question was simply, raise your hand if you think your IQ is above the median IQ in this group right now.
And everyone raised their hand.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was like one of these things where it's like, if you didn't raise your hand, you like looked at the people who didn't, and you're like, oh, you're actually smart, you know? Like, and there was like 2 out of like 50 who didn't raise their hand, which is freaking awesome. You know, it's it kind of identifies exactly what you're saying. Like, it's a method for us to feel superior to other people.
And I'm not judging people who do that too much, unless they go into like the whole weird scientific racist denial thing. Like Scott Alexander Siskin, you know, Slate's Codex. Like, he has this whole thing of like vaguely veiled actually believing in human biodiversity, and then like it used to be that you need to like cite like leaked emails to back this up. But recently he just posted like I think defending like Richard Lynn's research, who like took like bad IQ studies and kind of applied them very liberally, and like it's just now like full mask off, like, oh yeah, actually it doesn't matter if the studies are bad, like the brown people have low IQ, therefore there's like an actual thing, and like
it's predictive of income, and like their income would be higher if they're smart. Kind of the thing I said earlier, which is like, if you're so smart with your models, why aren't you a billionaire?
Yeah.
is like nobody is per se evil here, even people that I call out by name. It's just like these are convenient lies we tell ourselves if we're not actually given like a good reason to change, and also like the feeling of safety.
Yeah.
But like you're like successful enough and like a nice guy enough, and kind of like you also like have a family, so you have more of a life than most people in these circles, and so like you were implicitly probably considering, hey, what if like my child gets hit in the head and just can't perform in this society? And then like you might want society to not be cruel to your child, and that will like influence you towards a bit more kindness, unless you're so rich that you go, okay, trust fund, fine. Like then you're like,
I'm
and
definitely not that rich. But
yet,
oh wow,
yeah.
wow, you believe in me.
But do you know Scott Galloway, to like close this out a bit on just like vibing a little bit?
What's the publication?
Scott Galloway is like this. We need to bring back real capitalism, and real capitalism has strong antitrust laws. Is like a
Oh
marketing
yeah.
and business
I
professor.
I literally say that all the time, that
Yeah,
the reason we're failing is like we won't break up Amazon, Google. Man, I feel
yeah.
like a lot of the things I've said are probably like eliminating possible clients. But like my business partner is better about saying like I hate these people. I don't want to work with them no matter how much we pay. He's European, I'm American, so like we're too like we get the money eyes, and then we can't say no to
I mean,
anything.
like he also has healthcare without money, so like I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's copium, but yeah, sure. Um,
like like
is
like so like what I will give you the word. I just want to like I like to use Scott Galloway as a thing. Like you don't need to be like a socialist to kind of like see these problems, right? You
yeah,
can have like a capitalist solution
yeah,
to the same power concentrations,
yep.
and like to not go be a racist, because like it's actually stupid if you're a capitalist to be like racist and elitist, because you're just gonna like not get
Eliminate.
good
You're not gonna
talent.
get the
You're
best
gonna
talent. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Totally agree with this. And
yeah.
yeah. I mean, the redistribution of wealth is like obvious because the mechanisms in capitalism are most efficient by like concentrating, right? So like you can have a more efficient like organization by only having one CEO instead of many CEOs that are really very expensive. And
To some level, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, to some
like
level.
if the CEO takes so much ketamine and kind of like goes off the wire, you can burn 54 billion US dollar in value in like a few months.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll say internally at Amazon, I don't know if how much you know about the structure, but it goes like
Yeah.
there's the one CEO, and then under
Yeah.
him, there's like 12 CEOs of different
Yes.
business verticals. And it
Because
feels,
Jeff Bezos actually understands that like like you can't do it all your own, and actually like having like this internal competition is also like what makes it work, right? Like I know Amazon is like a meat grinder,
oh, yeah,
but
for
like there's
sure.
like I've heard stories of like two teams being given basically the same project, and like whoever makes the most progress like gets the budget allocated, and the rest
Yeah,
basically gets
yeah,
fired.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they fire on teams of like 12, they fire the lowest performing person every year. So,
And like the thing is like if you had like socialized healthcare and like a UBI, that would be awesome. That would be like like super efficient, like serving
no, but
logistics
it's like you
in some
fire
sense.
people and they're deported to Venezuela, like, and
Right.
they're
Yeah,
sometimes freaking like literally killed. So it's
that
like,
is not awesome.
yeah, it's freaking brutal. But like you're able to get insane. I mean, the quality of labor is phenomenal because of this, because people are literally working for their lives
Yeah.
and their families' lives. Um, yeah, I think this is
And
also a dark side of capitalism, where it's like the thing I actually would consider that like from a business perspective, it's like the most efficient thing for someone to literally feel like they have to put in 80 hours or they will die. Like that gives you the
there's
most out of
evidence
them.
against that. There's evidence against that actually. Like, do you know which country has like with the Americans like the highest productivity, as in like GDP per hour worked?
I don't know, I guess like Switzerland or Luxembourg or something like that.
Switzerland, Germany, and France.
Okay, yeah.
But the thing is, like, the French just take vacation, so their total output is less, but they could just like work more when they needed to on paper. Like, as like it doesn't work out that way because of scaling effects, but like you don't need that terror. It is just one way of doing it, and then you
Yeah.
have like other like externalities of like I have never heard of a Swiss CEO getting shot.
Yeah, I hope that's true. I don't know if that squares because like my ANIC data shows that it's very hard to keep up with someone who's as smart as me, but they will feel like they might die if they don't do their job. It's like I think I'm able to do
Like,
some kinds of work better, but other kinds of work I just like I would need to take lots of drugs to keep up. Like Adderall every day or something.
but like when this thing of I think this is what is it, like different tasks, and then kind of like I work with a lot of like Chinese, Indian like PhDs, and they're super smart. They're way better at like basics and recalling things than me, and like also like worker drones. But you can also kind of tell that like being in this kind of like meat grinder, it like narrows you, and you
Narrows your
can't be like
focus.
as like
Creative.
nimble, and so like
Oh yeah,
problem
yeah.
solving and like switching context becomes different. So it's like a different task set,
For sure, for sure.
and like like there are other options, I think, and kind of like the reason why I brought Scott Galloway and all of these things is kind of like it doesn't need to be like a giant shift once you start actually thinking about it. And then like I would wonder like if you now take like this discussion where like you seem to vibe with what I said to a certain degree, and now like you try to like look at like your AI like world model, and like what are like small changes that feel not completely crazy but you didn't like consider yet, that would actually like maybe relax you a bit. Like I spoke to one guy yesterday who was actually really scared of AGI happening, and like him being like the bitch of somebody, as in like literally like prison bitch.
Okay, wow,
um
wow.
and he's like a PhD from Oxford.
Oh
So
yeah,
like
yeah. Um,
so like what is a thing that like if you adjust it a little bit, you are actually like a lot more optimistic, or like you can see worlds you didn't see before.
oh, there's many things. The first thing that comes to mind is probably like orthogonality thesis. If it's just like not true, that relaxes things significantly.
Can you elaborate
Okay,
on that
let me.
just a little bit in terms of like um
You
what
want me to
and
define it?
why? First
Okay,
define
yeah.
it
So
and then say why.
okay, so
And then I will make your day a lot better.
there were the orthogonality thesis is simply the idea that uh, intelligence or competence is not correlated with morality.
Okay.
So if you could, let's say hypothetically, you have an eval and you can really accurately measure those, it's a really good proxy. You plot them on a x and y axis. Uh, there's
They aren't different dimensions
yeah,
perfectly.
yeah,
There
yeah,
is
exactly. They're
alignment
completely
between
uncorrelated.
those dimensions.
It's just a scatter, perfect scatter of like different beings and things. And this kind of should check out with your anecdata that it's true, because you think of like, oh, I know this autist from school who said the craziest shit, maybe was a serial killer or something, or was really mean to women, um, and yet he was the best in math class, something like this. And so you have this sort of like there's these anecdata in all of our lives that make it feel true. I think if there was good evidence and experiments that this is not true, that it's like once you gain significant competence and have a really good world model, you inherently have empathy and like want to not harm people. I think this relaxes my anxiety quite a bit. That's probably the entry point. There's many other things though.
Yeah, so let me try to relax anxiety, but first a couple of like notes. One, I know it as basically it's not about morality. It's just like every loss, if you optimize it enough, can lead to like high intelligence. It's like the version that I know of it. Like it's like orthogonal to what you're trying to do. So kind of like no particular reward is required for intelligence. And then by implication, morality is not required for
For a
intelligence.
high performing function.
Kind
Sure.
of
Yeah,
like
that makes sense.
yeah.
It's more general than what
Okay.
I said, but yeah,
Yeah.
that checks out.
Okay. So then another thing, like slight logical fallacy. Like I can't prove a negative. Like we can try like I can give you counter examples, but then you can always like fall back to, oh, but what about if this is the case? Kind of like unless your thing is like fully
Understood. Yeah, it's understood and
mathematicalized.
agreed upon.
So like given that, like what I can try to do is give you like evidence from like we see a theory of what seems to drive high intelligence, and like that is tightly correlated with social behavior, that which is basically like if you look into like the animal world, every single highly like intelligent is like cognitive skills, like not like using like the IQ bullshit, like it's a single level that makes you just better at everything, but like cognitively demanding things can do like theory of mind, can do counterfactual thinking, can like learn quickly. So like squids, the nautiluses, or like the cuttlefish, all of these like smart floaties, dolphins,
Yeah.
types of whales, primates, crows, bears, stuff like this. What they all have in common is kind of like the really smart ones are in some way social. Either that they are like pack hunters, so like wolves are really fucking smart. Bears are not as smart. They're still clever, but not as clever. And like lions have like the most complex social structure amongst cats, and they're also like the most clever of them. Crows, same thing. They're either like collaborative,
Okay.
and soul hunters don't get the same smarts, or they fuck each other over. So like parrots and crows and like squids, a lot of their thing is basically like social games, and like if like that is just like observational thing that like you don't seem to get super smart if you're not social, and then social implies that there's a certain degree of like empathy, and then like much weaker. So like this one should feel like strong credence, much weaker credence, but like a bit of incidental thing is like every one of these animals that has this type of cleverness also gets like curiosity and just plays around a bit, and is also fucking cruel in the beginning. But like like dolphins save humans just because like they seem, oh yeah, this guy seems to be drowning. I know if my calf was drowning, I'm gonna like help him out.
They also rape
sometimes
though.
drown. Yeah, that's the thing. Like there's also cruelty, and they also like drown people sometimes. So like there's just playful behavior, but from that comes this the possibility and like the like much higher than baseline thing of empathy. Like, and like one of the more stronger things then is like, think of humans. Humans anthropomorphize everything. And like I know people who have named every single object in their house that they've owned for more than 2 years, and they have like a actual like emotional relationship with that object, because we have such a strong bias towards like
Humanish
empathy.
things.
Yeah, because I would argue it's like good if you want to like track coordination. You know, like you and I, we're very different frames, but because we're so biased to presume like cooperation is possible, we can. So humans are like the apes that actually build like billion people societies that don't just collapse because of like nested biases towards cooperation. And then even if you look into game theory, like zero-sum games and like Bayesian Nash equilibria are bad. You can do much better if you realize, oh, actually, here, and here, we have something in common. Let's do a deal. Like those types of equilibria are just better and more efficient. And you see this with cross-species symbiosis as well. Like whenever it's possible, there's a strong bias to it because it's just more efficient. And then like the only times when you have like actual kind of like
parasitic
bias towards opposing, if there's no other way of doing it, basically. So all of these things are just in nature. And now going into like more abstract things.
Actually, wait. I just want to flag that because I feel like that last bit actually does make me feel different. Now that all the stuff before I wasn't feeling as strong of a vibe, but the thing that I was thinking is that power differentials kind of break this. But thinking about other things in the animal kingdom that are symbiotic, where the organisms clearly have massive power differentials. Like maybe like ants and fungi farming.
It's called marginal advantage. It's just like by like
it's comparative advantage.
The fish that clean the shark would be a nice snack, but he can also get another snack, and other snacks don't clean him from parasites, and so there's like a win-win in like not doing that.
Yep.
And then there's also like multipolar games, like lions are partially as smart as they are, is a theory, like one of the explanations, because in their environment, the water holes are like very valuable territory that you need to capture. And if you can do like social coordination, you can capture the water holes from like other animals, and then you can use those as like hunting areas for prey animals that the lions couldn't take down on their own.
Okay, this is making
And
me feel less
also,
good. This one.
no, but like also, the lions are being like preyed upon by other animals if they don't collaborate. So there's like a equilibrium at them cooperating, and then kind of like the reason why they still need to hunt is they're obligate carnivores, and like think about dogs. Dogs self-domesticate partially out of like already existing like social cooperation behaviors that they had and humans had. And by now, dogs have evolved muscles to be cute to humans.
Yeah.
Because it was such a win-win
Yeah.
that like making that stronger was good.
Yeah, I
And
think
like
the thing that's still worrying me, I would say, okay, like this is nice thought, first of all. This is very nice thought, and you've provided a lot of evidence, and you've used I feel like my way of thinking to prove this to me, which I am grateful for.
there's more. I have much stronger stuff.
that was already pretty strong, but I think there's like, yeah, obviously you mentioned before there could be counters. I guess I almost think about like our current path to AI as being more like less like even an animal and like closer to like amoeba or a virus even, because it's like
So,
and when you're thinking about viruses, I don't know what you believe about different extinction events, but I think about these events as like there's like always a probability that an extinction event can occur and something could be introduced into the environment that causes that. And like we may, by creating many versions of AGI or even trying to create one, we may introduce the extinction event AI.
but this is different thing. Like orthogonality thesis is independent of what you just described.
Okay, a little bit. I mean, there's the thing is like I guess the engineers or the person who thinks he's smart puts everything on a spectrum and say, oh, it's not always black and white, so they don't have to ever be wrong.
No, like
and
just like on a thing, like orthogonality is about morality and how can you get something smart. And like if we're saying like if we're talking about does being like smart in this vague way that we talk about, like having high cognitive like development, having like these like complex skill sets like reasoning and multi-step things, does that require empathy? Like that is independent of like if we make an empathetic AGI, will it get drunk with the bros and
Sure.
then blow up the planet because like
I was more pointing out that like I mean I guess this question for you, do you think it's possible that the orthogonality thesis is 100% false? Like it's definitely
yes.
false. Okay, you do. Okay.
Yes,
I guess
I want to give you the evidence. Let me give you evidence on this one, because like one thing, there's a paper that came out, David Silver and a bunch of other RL people, also Sutton. It was called "Reward is Enough." And what they did there was this thing that you described earlier of like taking some complexity and moving it somewhere else, because they proved mathematically that a sufficiently complicated environment, any given reward can lead to like any given behavior. So like arbitrary complex behavior, you can take any given reward in the environment. If it's complex enough, then it's gonna like lead to that, which is like obviously true, because you can just say like think of like move this glass of water to this position. If you can put arbitrary obstacles in between that you need to solve, you just encode your task into that arbitrary obstacle, and then like that's what you need to learn to do this. So obviously it's true, but it then is like, what is a sufficiently complex environment? And we know that like for everything there's always shortcuts. Like like you had your thing with the classifier. Like it didn't learn to like reject outliers automatically, because the simpler solution is to not do that. So you need to force it. You need to add the complexity in there. And then the one thing that made humans go whoosh was the social behavior. Like you need the social complexity and the interacting with somebody who has like your like mental acuity and the ability to like empathize and do theory of mind to get the complex problems that drive you to learn further. So like we're not gonna get an AI that is actually like doing the push thing if with everything we see right now, without it tapping into that sort of complexity, which is like navigating social environments. Because zero-sum games don't get you that. Otherwise, our predators would also be super smart. But zero-sum games don't seem to have this level of complexity. It's only social environments where it's like, you're my friend, but you also want to fuck the same girl that I want to fuck. So like, are you really my friend? Like, are you trying to help me, or are you just trying to look good in front of her? So I need to overthink all of this shit. And like, that is a thing that then gives you like the complexity signal that really drives the explosion.
Interesting that you're saying this.
There's one way to sidestep this, which is just imitate humans. But then you're literally training to be aligned with humans. Like, if you just and that's my other thing with this, like, the orthogonality thesis from the get-go was stupid, because all of our algorithms, what they do is they imitate humans, they operate in systems designed by humans, and they like get feedback from humans. So how the fuck can this not be like human compatible by construction? Like, you would need to like show a way for that to happen, and there's like selection pressure to be useful to humans as well. The only question is which humans. That's the only thing that that can kind of drive that. But like, there's nothing in the selection procedure or in what we know about like behavior to emerge, nor in the natural world, that justifies being anxious about this stuff. It's purely a thing of like somebody thought in very fuzzy ways and did like this like
you're like
Nick
Bostrom, Nick Bostrom
yes.
cells.
Yes, who has gone on the record that like he's like a highly anxious person. He's just like projected his anxieties on all of humanity, and like infected a lot of people who then kind of like don't actually like challenge because they don't have time for it, and he has like credentials of authority.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm in like a really awkward position. I mean, that is extremely compelling. Extremely compelling. The feeling I have now is like, I'm wondering if I just want to believe this because it makes me feel good. I also have a feeling of like, you know, my company essentially depends on me making more money is tied to people being worried about AI. So I have like financial incentives for this.
That. Like, you can make money by just making useful AI systems and actually like doing good EVAs and actually uncovering like the behavior. Like in the scenario where there is value in doing industrial cognition, you know, kind of like standardized, kind of the same, not human quality, but it's like good, you know, like the equivalent of a chicken nugget, but for thought. Then having like industrial scale measurement of cognition and like having that well done is also valuable.
And I also want to say that like, I think that having, so we've talked about in this episode, like I've talked about, all of us have talked about different ways that like things that we're concerned about essentially, that are augmented by use of these systems. We still need to be able to understand them very robustly to be able to have essentially a fighting chance to not get into those
harmful scenarios. Yeah. I like to think about the, you know, we've brought up like civil engineering a couple times, like bridge building or something, and it's like I think the current path is like a bridge will collapse. That feels very certain to me. I don't know what that looks like with AI. You know, I made a prediction about what it looks like. It would be really nice if we have the systems to like understand this, and we don't need the people to die. We don't need the value to be lost to like build the great system. So I'm still hopeful for that. And you know, like I'm you know, I'm really grateful for your criticalness. Also, even your willingness to read some of the things I've written. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge honor to have like smart people listen to what I say, and think. So yeah,
like,
thank you for that.
Is also because like I could tell that you're a nice guy, and I can see like that you know, that anxiety that like people were like not giving you like other actual tools, because like one thing how you can also look at your company is like automated high throughput auditing. Are you actually doing the thing you're doing for like just companies? Like if you just like if think like you have like a software as a service company, do you actually think like how is doing like high quality evals different from, do you know Jepsen, like the database eval? Like it's just quality checking of an abstract system. So like you might make more money if you can still plausibly tap into like the AGI hype stuff, and like go for it. You're nice enough that I like I don't know how to say it in English, but I would be content if you get rich of this as as long as you stay a nice person and you don't go scientific racist. But it doesn't depend on it. So like you're free to relax. You're free to actually not worry about the end of the world via AI.
Or at least
the cost is you have to. Sorry.
I guess I also want to say I don't want to make it seem like the goal here. I mean, maybe it was Igor's goal. I don't know, but was like to change your mind.
Part of the goal. I said part of the goal.
Oh, wait.
I also wanted to have his worldview.
I disagree.
But, I could tell things out.
Jacob, I disagree. Even for you, there is my belief that you cannot utter a phoneme without the goal of at least changing some model in your head, right? Like these words are going to change what you're thinking right now, and I'm intentionally doing that. Yeah, I mean, it's like this is why the megaphone thing is so awful, because you get really nefarious people who are often stupid basically raping our brains. Like the information never leaves, it's there, and our systems are increasingly aware of this and taking advantage of it. Like people are running ads that are intentionally don't make sense and are bizarre because you will tell someone about it, and then they know that the concepts, the brand is sticky enough that it increases the number of buys. So yeah, I mean, I think I am fine, and I come to the conversation knowing that there is intent to change my mind.
So I think that is the case for Igor. Absolutely.
But I was also willing to have my mind changed. Like if Chris had come in with solid arguments that just blast me out of the water, I would have changed my mind. Just to be clear on this.
Yeah, I think I've seen that happen with Igor before. So I do understand that. I guess my perspective here, and maybe this. So I feel like this is a great place for me to be, essentially, because I'm in a virtual room with two people that are just way smarter than me, which is fantastic. Because I get to learn a lot more and just be a fly on the wall during parts of the conversation. And the reason that I do this, do the podcasting and all of the work that I'm doing, is because I do want to change someone's mind. It's not yours though. It's the people who are listening, and it's not that I want them to change to a specific way, other than it matters, and it's possible to engage with. And then maybe that's because you find this interesting. Maybe that's because you are seeing some sort of societal impact that you care about. But that's essentially the thing, and this goes to what we were talking about earlier with democracy. I strongly believe that the way that we get to better solutions is actually more true democracy. And some of the ways that you mentioned, liquid democracy kind of things, I think that you can get there or closer with that. But being able to have the conversations without having these essentially very constructed narratives that are just pitched to us being taken at face value, and having skepticism there. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well, that I appreciate, I really appreciate you coming on and having these conversations with us, and at least for me, that's what it's in service of. And I believe, based on my understanding of your world model, that's also something that you care about and appreciate. And so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, but just to be this changing my mind thing, the only thing where I kind of want to change people's mind in these directions, directly towards something specific, is I would like people to not be anxious, because it also kills rational thought. And kind of these end of the world scenarios, they make it harder for people to actually think about what are the options in front of them. And like the other thing is this, what you described, like, does my career depend on this? There's also this thing of like, I'm happy if we still have different AI timelines. Like if you like think superintelligence is possible, all of this stuff. But like then I would like to have like like this like solid like causal chain ideally that we talked about, instead of having like the high level thing, just like a concrete. Yeah, this is how I think it will happen. And if you don't have that, I would like you to like not just be like vaguely anxious and like actually like worried about stuff like orthogonality thesis, which is, once you start looking into it, there's just nothing underneath it. Like there's nothing supporting it. It's just anxiety, self-enforcing itself, and like an echo bubble of that. And it has trapped so many smart and kind people who are like highly scrupulous. Like Rational Wiki is like run by non-rationals, and they describe EA as like a cult made by very scrupulous people to indoctrinate themselves into being more scrupulous and not being like good enough on saving the world. I'm not sure if they still have it in there, because like EA went very much in the direction of like AI hype stuff, but like that is accurate. Like there's a lot of people who have also talked to, who like burned out, who got depressed, who like are genuinely like suffering because of you seem fine, but like that is actual thing that I would also like to like dislodge in with conversations like that. And that's why I also like I had like a bit of a like way I wanted the conversation to go of like both of us lay out our kind of worldviews, and we kind of actually like probe all of them, and we have like deep conversations on them. And like I really like, thank you for engaging so much and like being this like the perfect like partner in this like tennis game, basically.
Oh yeah,
which I think
yeah.
also
It's
made really
definitely
good
fun.
points.
It's definitely fun. I think it's feeling like it's wrapping up. Is there like anything else you wanted to touch on? Any of the? I mean, like I feel like the original intention was maybe to talk about Omega Protocol or something like that.
I think we kind of did that via your like happily ever after, and,
Sure.
and like your worries, and like through the like democracy via controlling the megaphone thing in some levels. If you have stuff that you want to kind of like say, and like if it's insane, I might contextualize it, but like feel free to just like bring stuff up that you would find cool to end on now.
Yeah, I would say just to make sure that's clear, like we absolutely don't have to hit that. It's just like another thing. But if there's anything that you want to make sure we get in, then I want to make sure we also get a chance to cover that, because we also want there to be things that you get out of this interaction, like found it enjoyable too. So.
Oh no, I've already gotten more than I wanted. So yeah, I feel like it's almost less interesting to bring up Omega Protocol or my policy classification article. I think the thing with the Omega Protocol, I'm kind of frustrated that I feel like people in Silicon Valley are not honest about what their path is to AGI, like what they're actually doing. I think that's changed a little bit since I've written that. But yeah, so I was just trying to be like, hey, here's a plan that's shit, and I'm open to comment. I want people to comment on this, and like I want to improve it. This kind of goes back to the whole, Brian Kaplan keyhole solutions. It's like, hey, here's a really dumb idea that could be better than what's currently happening, and let's like poke holes in it and improve it type thing. So yeah, things like in that article that I actually like, I don't necessarily stand by, but I don't understand what would be better is like boxing. Like I don't think boxing works that well, but it feels like there should be some sort of like things shouldn't just be like on the public internet. Like we shouldn't have the models training on, the Microsoft data center that I can also rent a GPU and I'm sharing that GPU with the training data. Like I don't like that. And the companies have gotten in trouble for it already. Something I mentioned in preparation to this with you guys was like the sharing of caches, right? That's trash. That's really poor security. And I think basically at Amazon there was like other kinds of sharing that I didn't approve of and I tried to change. specifically with GPUs. Anyway, my intention with these pieces that are like bad like this, or things that I've contributed to that are more like memes, is like I want people to think about it because I am stuck in my idea. I'm literally stuck in the box of thinking that you can box AI and that's still somehow useful. And I need to generate ideas from smart people to break me out of this box. And so, yeah,
Have you
I
spoken to Davidat?
come again.
David A. Dalrymple? Have you ever had contact with him or spoken with him?
What's the last name?
Dalrymple. He's
No.
like the UK AI guy. So like his whole thing is like basically like build the AGI, but like on the ISS, far away from humanity, and have like the your council idea. Like he has basically like the same thing, just like he's working with the British, so he looks a lot more fancy. He has like a glorious mustache. Like
He really does have a
You,
good
you don't think
his
I'm fancy
facial hair is
enough?
very nice.
Oh
Well, I
wow, yeah,
mean, he has
I
slightly more
lack
facial
hair.
hair than you.
Yeah, I don't have any hair, so I have eyebrows. Yeah, so I do agree with you, Igor, that it wasn't necessary to bring up either of these things. Like they're kind of covered, and I think the credence of which I have like these different beliefs, and also that I'm willing to put trash on the internet, slop, to get abolished.
Yeah, is there any so that's it then? Yes, there are no last things you want to make sure we hit.
Nope. Yeah, I guess we're hiring, so you can reach out to me via my website or via our website, EquiStamp.com.
And
Yeah,
I
and
guess just a side note, I actually talked with someone who is one of your baseline people recently. He gave glowing reviews. It
of
was
me?
the
Oh, wow.
of working with EquiSnap, not you
Oh
specifically.
yeah.
I didn't say
We're
like
very okay. I think this is the thing. Like we're freedom maxing, so we're like we do no meetings. Maybe I should say this too. This is an advertisement for our company. There's no meetings. There's no amount of time you have to work for us. We try to provide some benefits, like pay for some people's internet. We pay for some people's Starlink. We encourage them to work in any country that they want. And yeah, I mean, like it's if you want to work 100 hours a week or 5 hours, we're okay with that. We set the limit at like below 5 hours for I think 2 weeks. We ask if you still want to work with us because we're like,
I mean that's
yeah,
fair though. That's
yeah,
like
yeah. So
yeah.
there's kind of like a lower limit because there's some maintenance cost of like paying for
Yeah.
people's stuff. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
I think also I do hate the thing we talked about earlier where it's like if you're born in certain countries, it's so much harder for you to contribute
Yeah.
to the world. And so like my thinking is like, okay, like I have fortunate enough I've been born here. I also like I had some financial safety net, and then I'm like also smart enough to like be able to work for Fang and save up a bunch of money.
Right.
And so like now I can be a CEO who works for. I feel like this is gonna sound like an asshole. Who works for? We pay ourselves 104,000 a year, me and Daniel. So it's like that's to give you an idea. That's like less than a third of what I was making at Amazon. So for me, it's like a big downgrade. My wife's pissed, but like I think other people in different parts of the world they consider that like a really nice amount of money. Um,
Yeah. I'd be
so
happy
it's
with
like
that amount of money.
yeah, so this is the minimum that we're paying. So if you work 40 hours, that is,
Sure.
we do hourly. So some people make much more than that though because they work more and they get the bonuses and stuff. So
Sure.
yeah, that's the ad. Lots of freedom. Could be if you're in Silicon Valley, you're probably like, what is this trash salary? Like, how are you getting, top tier engineers for that amount of money? And it's like because they have enough money, they are like basically retired and they want to contribute to these sorts of projects. So that's how we get them.
Or they
And
can't get
it could
to
be you too.
Silicon Valley.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is another thing. Dude, that actually is a huge win. There's so many people that are just like,
Yeah.
I will never move to San Francisco
Yep.
ever. And yeah, you would vibe well with some of the people on the team.
so anyone who listens, go apply to Chris if it suits you.
Again, we want to thank you, Chris, so much for joining us. We've been talking for almost 4 hours now, and it's been a pleasure. Obviously, the the episode isn't going to be that long, but yeah, it was fantastic, and it was great to have you on.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure talking to you guys and you updating my priors. I am really grateful for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining, and also thanks for being like one of a few like actual capitalists, like the efficient and kind of good kind.
Oh, wow, wow. Okay, yeah, I'll own that.
And because I end with this, I will say it, but that's all of the muck we can take for this week, despite there not being any. And we'll see you next time.